Imagine a time when the world was raw, unexplained, and vast, where the whispers of the wind carried more than just sound. They carried secrets, portents, and the very fabric of fate. For millennia, humanity has been captivated by the idea of knowing what tomorrow holds, of glimpsing the tapestry of the future before it unfolds. From the oracles of Delphi to the shamans in ancient forests, people have sought wisdom, guidance, and validation in the mysterious realm of prophecy. We've been drawn to these ancient whispers not just as stories, but as profound possibilities, wondering if some individuals, some cultures, truly held a key to unlocking the mysteries of time itself. This fascination isn't just about curiosity. It's about a deeper human yearning to understand our place in the universe, to find meaning in the chaos, and perhaps to feel a connection to something larger than ourselves. Think about it. What if some of those ancient claims weren't just folklore or wishful thinking? What if, buried within the dusty scrolls and etched into forgotten stone tablets, there existed knowledge so precise, so unnervingly accurate, that it predicted events centuries, even millennia, before they came to pass? The idea alone sends shivers down the spine, challenging everything we thought we knew about history, causality, and the very nature of reality. It's a concept that has fueled countless legends, inspired epic tales, and even shaped the course of nations. The mere suggestion that 25 ancient prophecies could have manifested in our world is enough to make anyone pause and consider the incredible implications. Were these just wild guesses, fortunate coincidences, or something far more profound, a true bridge between past seers and future events? Today, we embark on an extraordinary journey through time, sifting through the annals of history to uncover 25 ancient prophecies that came true. We're not talking about vague predictions open to endless interpretation, but specific, verifiable events that unfold exactly as foretold. Prepare to have your perceptions challenged, your mind expanded, and your sense of wonder ignited. We will explore predictions ranging from the rise and fall of empires to the destinies of legendary figures, and even technological advancements that seem impossibly far-sighted. This isn't just a historical tour, it's an exploration into the very edges of human understanding, where the veil between the known and the unknown thins. Get ready to dive deep into these unexplained phenomena, to question the boundaries of possibility, and to witness how the echoes of ancient voices continue to resonate powerfully in our modern world. It's a journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about fate, destiny, and the incredible power of foresight. Our first stop takes us back to the legendary city of Troy, a place romanticized in epic poems and immortalized in myth, yet rooted in historical fact. Before the birth of Paris, son of King Priam and Queen Hecuba of Troy, Queen Hecuba received a chilling prophecy. According to the ancient tales, she dreamed she gave birth to a flaming torch that consumed the entire city. When she consulted with seers and oracles, they interpreted this terrifying vision to mean that her unborn child would be the cause of Troy's utter destruction. The advice given was dire. The infant Paris should be exposed, left to die on Mount Ida to avert the city's tragic fate. However, as is often the case with prophecies, destiny has a way of unfolding despite humanity's best efforts to alter it. Paris was not left to perish. He was rescued and raised by shepherds, growing into a young man of remarkable beauty. His fateful journey began when he was asked to judge a beauty contest between three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each goddess offered him a bribe for his favor, but it was Aphrodite's promise that sealed Troy's doom. She offered him the hand of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen. There was one significant problem. Helen was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. When Paris, with Aphrodite's aid, abducted Helen and brought her back to Troy, he ignited the spark that would become the raging inferno of Queen Hecuba's dream. This act of grave offense provoked the Achaeans, the united Greek forces, to launch a massive expedition to reclaim Helen and punish Troy. What followed was a decade-long siege, known to us as the Trojan War, a conflict that tested the limits of human endurance, strategy, and divine intervention. Great heroes like Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, and Ajax clashed on the plains before Troy's formidable walls, fulfilling countless smaller prophecies and omens along the way. Despite Troy's robust defenses and the courage of its warriors, the prophecy of its destruction loomed large. The war culminated in one of the most ingenious and infamous stratagems in military history, the Trojan horse. After 10 years of fruitless siege, the Achaeans, under the brilliant mind of Odysseus, constructed a colossal wooden horse, seemingly as an offering to Athena, then feigned retreat. The Trojans, believing the Greeks had given up and the horse was a divine gift, brought it inside their impregnable city walls, celebrating their supposed victory. But hidden within the belly of that horse was a contingent of elite Greek soldiers. Under the cloak of night, these soldiers emerged, opening the city gates for the rest of the Achaean army who had secretly returned. The unsuspecting city was then sacked, its temples desecrated, its men slaughtered, and its women and children enslaved. The once proud city of Troy was utterly burned to the ground, fulfilling Queen Hecuba's terrifying prophecy to the letter. This wasn't just a general prediction of trouble. It was a specific foretelling of destruction caused by a person, directly tied to the very sun whose birth initiated these catastrophic events. The ruins of ancient Troy, excavated and studied by archaeologists, bear witness to layers of destruction, offering tangible evidence of fierce conflicts that align with the epic narratives, cementing this as one of history's most striking fulfilled prophecies. From the tragic fall of Troy, we journey northeast to the heartland of ancient Media, a powerful empire that once dominated much of the Near East. Our next chilling prophecy centers on the remarkable life of Cyrus the Great, the legendary founder of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, whose rise was foretold in a dream, much like the destruction of Troy. This account, vividly chronicled by the Greek historian Herodotus, paints a compelling picture of a prophecy that directly mirrored the cyclical nature of power and the relentless march of fate in ancient empires. Herodotus recounts that Astyages, the powerful king of Media, had two disturbing dreams concerning his daughter, Mandane, and her unborn son. In the first dream, Astyages saw a vine growing from Mandane that overshadowed his entire kingdom, a clear omen that her offspring would eventually usurp his throne. Troubled by this vision, he hastily married Mandane off to a Persian nobleman named Cambyses, a man he considered far beneath Median royalty, believing that a son born of such a union would be less likely to fulfill the ominous prophecy. However, fate, as it often does in these ancient tales, had a more intricate plan. Astyages had a second, even more terrifying dream. This time, he saw a flood emanating from his daughter that completely engulfed his city and swept away his empire. The interpretations were undeniable. Mandane's son was destined not just to rule, but to conquer and dismantle Astyages' dominion. Driven by fear and a desperate attempt to defy destiny, King Astyages commanded his chief general, Harpagus, to kill the infant Cyrus immediately after his birth. Yet, just as with Paris, the order for infanticide was not fully carried out. Harpagus, unable to bring himself to murder the royal child, secretly entrusted the baby to a herdsman named Mithridates with instructions to expose him on a remote mountainside. Mithridates, too, found himself unable to abandon the child. Instead, he and his wife, whose own child had been stillborn, decided to raise Cyrus as their own, substituting their deceased infant for the royal one. Thus, Cyrus grew up among humble shepherds, unaware of his true lineage, a king in the making disguised among the common folk. Several years passed, and young Cyrus's true nature began to emerge. His leadership qualities and regal demeanor became undeniable, even in the rough and tumble games of shepherd children. When he was about 10 years old, an incident during playtime where Cyrus asserted a natural authority over other boys drew the attention of King Astyages. The king, noting the boy's striking resemblance to Mandane and the peculiar circumstances of his upbringing, finally learned the truth, recognizing the inescapable hand of fate and perhaps a touch of remorse for his past actions. Astyages allowed Cyrus to return to his birth parents, Cambyses and Mandane, in Persia. Harpagus, however, paid a brutal price for his disobedience, suffering the horrific fate of unknowingly eating his own son at a banquet orchestrated by the vengeful Astyages. The prophecy, however, was not averted, it was merely delayed. As Cyrus matured, he quickly rose to prominence within the Persian kingdom, which was then a vassal state to Media. Driven by a combination of ambition, political maneuvering by Harpagus, who secretly harbored a deep desire for revenge against Astyages, and the growing discontent among the Median nobility, Cyrus led a rebellion against his grandfather. The Persian army, under Cyrus's brilliant leadership, proved to be a formidable force. The Median troops, many of whom were disillusioned with Astyages' rule and secretly swayed by Harpagus, defected to Cyrus's side. In an astonishing turn of events, Cyrus ultimately defeated Astyages, capturing him and seizing control of the Median Empire. This conquest was not merely a change of leadership. It marked the transfer of imperial power from the Medes to the Persians, establishing the foundation of the vast Achaemenid Persian Empire. Herodotus's detailed account leaves little doubt that Astyages' dreams, dismissed and then feared, were precise forecasts of Cyrus's destiny. The story of Cyrus the Great stands as a powerful testament to the idea that some prophecies, particularly those concerning the ebb and flow of dynastic power, appear to be an inescapable force, shaping history despite every human attempt to alter their predetermined course. Our historical journey now takes an intriguing turn, leading us west from Persia to the legendary figure of Alexander the Great, a conqueror whose ambitions knew no bounds and whose life, though brief, reshaped the ancient world. His story is not merely one of military genius and expansion, but also one deeply intertwined with ancient prophecy, a cautionary tale of a powerful leader who chose to defy a dire warning with catastrophic consequences for himself and his vast empire. The stage for this next prophetic drama is set in the ancient city of Babylon, a place steeped in history and known for its sophisticated astronomical and astrological knowledge. As Alexander approached Babylon in the spring of 323 BCE, fresh from his conquests across Asia and eager to consolidate his immense empire, he received a series of ominous warnings. According to historical accounts, particularly those from classical writers like Arrian and Diodorus Siculus, Chaldean priests and prophets, known for their skill in divination and their understanding of celestial omens, earnestly cautioned Alexander against entering the city. They held a deep reverence for the sacred knowledge passed down through generations, and their prophecies were not to be taken lightly. These wise men, perhaps sensing a disturbance in the cosmic order or interpreting specific astrological configurations, foresaw great misfortune, even death, for the young king if he proceeded with his planned re-entry into Babylon. Some accounts suggest they specifically warned that Babylon would be a fatal trap for him, urging him instead to bypass the city and approach it from a different direction, or even to avoid it altogether. But Alexander, imbued with an unshakable belief in his own destiny and perhaps a touch of hubris that often accompanies unparalleled success, dismissed these warnings. He was not one to be swayed by superstition. His plans for Babylon were grand. He intended to make it the capital of his sprawling empire, a central hub from which he would govern his vast domains and launch further campaigns. He envisioned a magnificent city restored to its former glory, serving as the jewel in his imperial crown. Therefore, despite the persistent pleas and dire predictions of the Chaldean prophets, Alexander rode triumphantly into Babylon, seemingly defying fate. The prophecy, however, proved tragically true. Within a few months of his arrival in Babylon, Alexander fell gravely ill. His condition rapidly deteriorated, marked by a high fever, exhaustion, and intense pain. Despite the best efforts of his physicians, his health continued to decline, and after approximately 10 to 12 days of intense suffering, Alexander the Great, the seemingly invincible conqueror who had never lost a battle, died at the tender age of 32 in June of 323 BC. The exact cause of his death remains one of history's greatest mysteries, still debated by scholars today. Some theories point to natural causes, such as malaria or West Nile virus, prevalent in the marshy regions around Babylon. Others suggest more sinister possibilities, like poisoning, perhaps orchestrated by disgruntled generals, envious rivals, or even those close to him who sought to claim a share of his vast power. Whatever the medical truth behind his demise, the timing and location of his death, precisely as the Chaldean prophets had foretold, lent immense weight to their unheeded warnings. Alexander's death in Babylon had an immediate and profound impact on the geopolitical landscape. His empire, built through relentless conquest and held together primarily by his singular charisma and strategic brilliance, almost immediately began to fracture. He had no clear successor, and his generals, the Diadochi, plunged into a series of brutal wars of succession that lasted for decades. These conflicts, known as the Wars of the Diadochi, ultimately led to the dissolution of his vast empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms ruled by his former generals and their descendants. We can see this dissolution clearly when we look at maps of his campaigns, tracing his incredible expansion across 3 continents, only to see it splinter into separate entities after his death. The unity he forged was ephemeral, crumbling precisely because the central pillar, Alexander himself, was removed from the equation. The Chaldean prophecy about Alexander's death in Babylon thus stands as a chilling example of a warning unheeded, a powerful illustration of how even the strongest will can be bound by what some might call destiny, or at the very least an uncanny foresight. His premature death, occurring exactly where and when it was prophesied, served not only as a personal tragedy but also as the pivotal moment that reshaped the ancient world, altering the course of subsequent history and setting the stage for the rise and fall of new powers in the Hellenistic era. The echoes of those unheeded warnings from the wise men of Babylon continue to resonate, reminding us that even the most formidable figures cannot always escape the shadows of ancient premonitions. Having explored prophecies of empires and kings, we now turn our attention to one of history's most vivid and tragic fulfillments, the destruction of Pompeii. This isn't a story of political maneuvering or military might, but of nature's terrifying power and humanity's fatal oversight. For centuries, Mount Vesuvius had stood silent, a benevolent giant overlooking the Bay of Naples, its slopes fertile and inviting. The Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum thrived at its foot, bustling with life, commerce, and pleasure. Yet, lurking beneath this idyllic facade was a sleeping behemoth, and ancient whispers, though vague, had hinted at its destructive potential. The Romans had their own sources of prophecy, notably the Sibylline oracles, a collection of prophetic utterances believed to have been delivered by priestesses favored by Apollo. These oracles were consulted during times of crisis, their pronouncements often cryptic and open to interpretation. While specific, detailed warnings about Vesuvius are not explicitly recorded as having been delivered in clear, unmistakable terms, the general understanding within Roman society was that the earth could, at any moment, unleash its fury. There were folklore and local legends about the mountain, vague warnings of fire and ash, of the ground trembling and the sky darkening. These were, however, often dismissed as mere superstition or attributed to vengeful deities, failing to translate into concrete action or widespread understanding of the true geological threat. The Roman worldview, while sophisticated in many ways, often attributed natural phenomena to divine will rather than predictable geological processes, which allowed a certain level of complacency to settle in. They saw tremors and minor eruptions as signs from gods, not as precursors to an unimaginable catastrophe. The people of Pompeii and Herculaneum lived in blissful ignorance or perhaps willful disregard of the immense danger beneath their feet. They had experienced earthquakes before, notably a severe one in 62 AD that caused significant damage to Pompeii. This event should have served as a stark warning, a preview of the mountain's awakening. Yet, instead of evacuating or building defenses, the citizens rebuilt their homes and temples, even grander than before, demonstrating an incredible resilience combined with a tragic lack of foresight. The very fertility of the volcanic soil, which made their vineyards and gardens flourish, became a cruel irony, binding them inextricably to the source of their eventual demise. The vague, unheeded warnings of the past were about to crystallize into a terrifying reality. Then, on a seemingly ordinary day, August 24th, 79 AD, the world for the inhabitants of Pompeii and Herculaneum changed forever. Mount Vesuvius erupted with a cataclysmic force that dwarfed any previous activity. Pliny the Younger, a Roman administrator and poet, provided one of the most chilling eyewitness accounts of this disaster. From a safe distance across the Bay of Naples, he described a massive pine tree-shaped cloud of ash, pumice, and gas erupting from the mountain, darkening the sky and raining down destruction. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, a renowned natural historian, sailed towards the eruption in an attempt to rescue friends, only to succumb to the toxic fumes, becoming a victim himself. Pliny the Younger's letters described the terrifying darkness that descended upon the region, the hail of ash and stone, and the desperate attempts of people to flee, often in vain. He recounts the panic, the cries of terror, and the eerie silence that followed, a silence signifying the end of an entire civilization. The initial phase of the eruption buried Pompeii under a thick layer of pumice and ash. Those who didn't flee immediately or who sought shelter were eventually trapped. The second and more deadly phase involved pyroclastic flows, superheated avalanches of gas, ash, and volcanic debris that rushed down the mountain slopes at incredible speeds. These flows, reaching temperatures of hundreds of degrees Celsius, instantly incinerated everything in their path, including any remaining inhabitants. Herculaneum, closer to the volcano, was buried by these flows and subsequent mudslides, preserving organic materials like wood, fabric, and even food for nearly 2 millennia. Pompeii, though further away, was entombed under layers of ash and pumice, effectively freezing it in time. What makes the destruction of Pompeii unique and a powerful fulfillment of those vague ancient warnings is the manner in which it was preserved. The layers of ash and pumice formed a perfect, airtight mold around everything they covered. When archaeologists began excavating in the 18th and 19th centuries, they discovered an entire city perfectly preserved, frozen at the moment of disaster. Perhaps the most poignant discovery came in the mid-19th century, when Giuseppe Fiorelli developed a technique to create plaster casts of the victims. By pouring plaster into the voids left by decomposed bodies within the hardened ash, archaeologists were able to recreate the final moments of the inhabitants in chilling detail. These casts show men, women, children, and even animals contorted in agony, shielding their faces or embracing loved ones, their clothing and expressions captured for eternity. These are not just artifacts, they are direct, visceral connections to the human cost of the eruption, illustrating the suddenness and brutality of the end that came precisely as foretold in those long-ignored warnings of fire and ash. The city, its frescoes, its tools, its streets, and its people were all buried, only to be unearthed centuries later as a testament to the accuracy of nature's dreadful prophecy. From the overwhelming force of nature, we now pivot to the intricate and often cruel tapestry of human fate, as foretold by the most famous oracle of the ancient world, the Oracle of Delphi. This is a prophecy not of empires or cities, but of a single man, Oedipus, whose tragic destiny has echoed through millennia, serving as a profound exploration of free will versus an inescapable fate. The story of Oedipus, immortalized in the plays of Sophocles, particularly Oedipus Rex and Oedipus at Colonus, is perhaps the most well-known and chilling example of a self-fulfilling prophecy in Greek mythology, a narrative that makes us question whether destiny can ever truly be outrun. The tale begins in the ancient Greek city of Thebes with King Laius and Queen Jocasta. Like many royal couples, they were anxious for an heir. However, when Laius consulted the oracle of Delphi, the response was not one of celebration but of horrifying dread. The priestess, channeling the words of Apollo, delivered a chilling pronouncement. Any son born to Laius would be destined to kill his father and marry his mother. This was not a vague warning but a direct, unequivocal curse, a terrifying glimpse into a future they desperately wished to avoid. Imagine the despair, the fear that must have gripped the royal couple, knowing their future child carried such a dark and destructive fate. In a desperate attempt to thwart what seemed an unalterable decree, King Laius and Queen Jocasta devised a plan to circumvent the prophecy. When their son, Oedipus, was born, Laius ordered a shepherd to abandon the infant on Mount Cithaeron, his ankles pierced and bound to prevent him from crawling away, ensuring his death by exposure. The king believed that by eliminating the child, he could sever the thread of fate and escape the horrific prediction. This brutal act, a desperate measure to defy the gods, showcases the belief prevalent in the ancient world that one could, through extreme actions, trick or outwit destiny. However, as with many such attempts in Greek tragedy, fate often finds a way. The shepherd, taking pity on the helpless infant, did not leave Oedipus to die. Instead, he gave the child to another shepherd from Corinth, who in turn brought him to King Polybus and Queen Merope of Corinth, who were childless. They adopted Oedipus, raising him as their own son, never revealing his true origins. Oedipus grew up believing he was the biological son of Polybus and Merope, living a life seemingly free from the shadow of the Delphic prophecy. He was a prince, strong, intelligent, and destined for greatness, but entirely unaware of the dark secret of his birth. Years later, as a young man, Oedipus himself consulted the oracle of Delphi, perhaps to inquire about his future, or perhaps spurred by taunts from others about his unusual parentage. The oracle confirmed the horrific prophecy. He was destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Unaware that Polybus and Merope were not his biological parents, Oedipus fled Corinth in terror, believing he was escaping the fate of harming those he considered his true family. He was trying to outrun destiny, but unknowingly, he was running directly into its arms. This act of flight, driven by a desire to avoid the prophecy, became the very catalyst for its fulfillment. On his journey at a crossroads, Oedipus encountered an older man and his retinue. A dispute over right-of-way quickly escalated into a violent confrontation, and in a fit of rage, Oedipus killed the old man and most of his companions. Unbeknownst to him, the man he had just slain was King Laius, his biological father. The first part of the prophecy, the patricide, was unknowingly fulfilled. Oedipus continued his journey, eventually arriving at the gates of Thebes, a city then plagued by the monstrous Sphinx, who devoured anyone unable to answer her riddle. Oedipus, with his sharp intellect, successfully solved the Sphinx's riddle, freeing Thebes from her tyranny. As a reward, and because their king had recently been murdered, the grateful citizens of Thebes offered Oedipus the throne and the hand of their widowed queen, Jocasta. Oedipus married Jocasta, and together they ruled Thebes, having several children. For years, the second part of the prophecy, the incestuous marriage, remained unknowingly fulfilled. The horrific truth only came to light when a terrible plague struck Thebes. Oedipus, now king and deeply concerned for his people, vowed to find the murderer of the former king Laius to appease the gods and lift the plague. Through a relentless investigation, consulting oracles and witnesses, and interviewing the very shepherd who had spared him as an infant, the shocking truth was gradually, agonizingly revealed. He was not only Laius's killer, but Jocasta's son. The man had married his own mother, and the children he had fathered were his half-siblings. Upon discovering the horrifying reality, Jocasta, unable to bear the shame and the weight of the unwitting incest, took her own life. Oedipus, consumed by guilt and despair, blinded himself with her brooches, unwilling to witness the world that mirrored his terrible deeds. He then exiled himself from Thebes, a broken man, wandering the land as a tragic figure, a living embodiment of a prophecy fulfilled despite every desperate attempt to prevent it. The story of Oedipus is a masterclass in tragic irony, demonstrating how human efforts to escape fate can, paradoxically, lead directly to its realization. The Oracle of Delphi's prediction for Oedipus serves as a powerful and enduring example of a prophecy that, through seemingly unrelated events and desperate interventions, came true with devastating precision, illustrating the ancient Greek belief in an unyielding cosmic order and the inexorable power of destiny. From the deeply personal tragedy of Oedipus, we now shift our focus to an event of colossal historical significance: the decline and eventual fall of one of the greatest empires the world has ever known, the Roman Empire. This momentous collapse was not a sudden cataclysm, but a protracted process spanning centuries, and remarkably, its eventual demise was anticipated by ancient seers, most notably the legendary Cumaean Sibyl. Her prophecies, often enigmatic and delivered in trance-like states, were deeply revered by the Romans themselves, consulted in times of extreme peril, and seen as direct pronouncements from the gods. While not offering specific dates, the Sibyl's utterances, recorded in the Sibylline books, hinted at a cyclical nature of empires, with an eventual decline prophesied for Rome, suggesting a period of intense tribulation, moral decay, and fragmentation leading to its ultimate downfall. These were not casual predictions but sacred texts whose interpretations shaped Roman policy and mindset for generations. The Cumaean Sibyl, one of the most famous prophetesses of antiquity, resided near Naples, not far from the very shadow of Vesuvius we just discussed. Her prophecies concerning Rome were compiled into the Sibylline books, a collection so important that they were guarded by a special college of priests and consulted only by order of the Roman Senate during times of national crisis, such as plagues, famine, or military defeats. While the original books were destroyed in various fires over time, references to their content, and indeed new compilations and interpretations, lingered throughout Roman history. These ancient texts spoke of a future where Rome, despite its glory and might, would eventually succumb to internal strife and external pressures. They depicted a future of moral decay, civil war, and ultimately the triumph of foreign powers over the eternal city. This wasn't merely a pessimistic outlook, it was a deeply ingrained cultural belief, a sort of background hum of inevitable decline that permeated the Roman psyche, often influencing how they reacted to crises. The Sibyl's warnings, though abstract, served as a constant reminder that even the mightiest empire was not immune to the laws of entropy. Later Roman historians and philosophers, reflecting on the unfolding events of their time, echoed and amplified these ancient prophetic sentiments, even if they didn't explicitly cite the Sibyl in every instance. They identified a confluence of factors that, over centuries, gnawed away at the foundations of the empire. One of the most glaring issues was the constant pressure from barbarian invasions. From the 3rd century CE onwards, the borders of the Roman Empire, stretching from Hadrian's Wall in the north to the deserts of North Africa, were under relentless assault. Goths, Vandals, Huns, Franks, and other Germanic tribes, driven by population pressures, climate change, or the allure of Roman wealth, frequently breached the frontiers. These incursions were incredibly costly, draining the empire's resources, diverting manpower from productive labor, and forcing Rome into a constant state of defensive warfare. The prophecy of foreign powers triumphing over Rome began to materialize not as a single grand defeat, but as 1,000 cuts slowly bleeding the empire dry. Alongside the military pressures, Rome also faced a profound economic collapse. The vast imperial system required enormous sums of money to maintain its legions, its infrastructure, and its lavish public works. However, hyperinflation became rampant, diminishing the value of Roman currency. Trade routes, once secure, became perilous due to piracy and barbarian raids, disrupting commerce and leading to shortages. Taxation became increasingly burdensome for the populace, driving many into poverty and resentment. Agricultural output declined in many regions due to constant warfare and neglect, further exacerbating food shortages. This economic instability severely weakened the central government's ability to pay its soldiers, maintain its roads, or provide for its citizens, creating a vicious cycle of decline. The vision of internal strife and decline hinted at by the Sibyl found its manifestation in the economic ruin that gripped the empire. Perhaps most insidiously, widespread corruption festered within the Roman system. From the highest echelons of power to local administrators, graft, bribery, and nepotism became endemic. Emperors were often assassinated or deposed by ambitious generals, leading to political instability and a rapid succession of weak rulers. Public offices were bought and sold rather than earned through merit, leading to incompetent leadership. The traditional Roman virtues of civic duty, integrity, and self-sacrifice eroded, replaced by self-interest and a cynical approach to governance. This moral decay, a core theme in many ancient prophecies of societal decline, weakened the very fabric of Roman society, making it less resilient to external shocks and internal dissent. The unity that had once been Rome's greatest strength began to fray, mirroring the Sibyl's vision of fragmentation. The culmination of these centuries-long pressures came in 476 CE, a date often cited as the official fall of the Western Roman Empire. In that year, the Germanic chieftain Oedipus deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, effectively ending over 1,000 years of Roman imperial rule in the West. This was not a dramatic, climactic battle that spelled the end of an era, but rather a final, almost quiet whimper. Romulus Augustulus was a child emperor, a mere figurehead, and his deposition barely registered outside of Italy at the time. The real power had already shifted, fragmented into numerous Germanic kingdoms that had carved out territories within the former empire's borders. The Roman administrative structures, the legal systems, and much of the Latin language and culture persisted in various forms, but the political unity and centralized authority were gone. The visual evidence of this decline is stark and compelling. Archaeological digs reveal a gradual abandonment of public works, a shrinking of urban centers, and a decline in the quality of artistry and infrastructure from earlier periods. Ancient Roman roads, once meticulously maintained, fell into disrepair. Grand aqueducts that supplied cities with fresh water slowly crumbled. Magnificent Roman villas were often replaced by smaller, more rustic dwellings. Artifacts from the late Roman period, compared to the Golden Age, often show simpler craftsmanship, reflecting a society grappling with resource scarcity and instability. The military might was no longer symbolized by massive, well-organized legions, but by increasingly desperate and often mercenary forces. The prophesied decline was etched not just in texts, but in the very ruins left behind, tangible evidence of an empire that slowly but inexorably withered away, just as the Cumaean Sibyl, centuries before, had perhaps vaguely foreseen. From the fall of empires, our gaze now turns to a prophecy of a different kind, one that transcends political boundaries and reshaped the spiritual landscape of the world. We are talking about the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, an event whose circumstances were meticulously foretold centuries beforehand in the ancient texts of the Old Testament. This is perhaps one of the most widely known and deeply impactful prophecies, foundational to Christianity and central to understanding the Messianic expectations that permeated ancient Jewish society. It's a story woven with divine intervention and human interpretation, illustrating how ancient prophecies can be seen to manifest in the unfolding of history, not just as isolated events, but as part of a larger, predetermined narrative. Central to these ancient predictions is the passage from Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, which declares, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel." This particular prophecy, penned by the prophet Isaiah around 700 years before the birth of Christ, speaks of a miraculous birth, a sign from God himself. The Hebrew word used for virgin can also be interpreted as young woman, leading to centuries of theological debate. However, for early Christians, the Greek Septuagint translation, which explicitly uses parthenos, meaning virgin, reinforced the miraculous nature of Mary's conception without earthly intervention. This specific detail of a virgin birth was not a common expectation for a messianic figure, making its alleged fulfillment all the more striking to believers. It set Jesus apart, signaling a unique divine origin that defied conventional understanding. Another crucial Old Testament prophecy, found in Micah chapter 5, verse 2, pinpointed the exact location of the Messiah's birth. "But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times." This prediction, made by the prophet Micah approximately 750 years before the event, is incredibly specific. Bethlehem was a relatively insignificant village at the time, overshadowed by Jerusalem, the political and religious center. Yet this prophecy declared Bethlehem, David's hometown, as the birthplace of the promised ruler. This particularity is significant because it narrows down the possibilities, transforming a general expectation into a precise geographical marker, making its eventual fulfillment more compelling. The New Testament narratives, specifically the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, meticulously detail how these ancient prophecies were purportedly fulfilled in the life of Jesus. Matthew's Gospel begins by tracing Jesus' lineage back to King David and Abraham, immediately establishing his royal and prophetic pedigree. It then recounts the extraordinary circumstances of Jesus' birth. His mother Mary, a virgin betrothed to Joseph, was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. An angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, confirming the miraculous conception and instructing him to name the child Jesus, declaring that he would save his people from their sins. This directly aligns with the Isaiah prophecy, portraying Jesus as the Emmanuel, God with us, through miraculous conception. Luke's Gospel further elaborates on the circumstances surrounding the birth in Bethlehem. It explains that a Roman decree from Emperor Caesar Augustus, ordering a census to be taken throughout the entire Roman world, necessitated Joseph and Mary to travel from their home in Nazareth in Galilee to Bethlehem in Judea. This journey was not planned by them. It was a consequence of a widespread imperial edict. Yet, this seemingly random historical event served as the precise mechanism by which Mary, heavily pregnant, found herself in Bethlehem, precisely as foretold by Micah. The narrative emphasizes the lack of room in the inn, forcing them to take shelter in a stable where Jesus was born and laid in a manger. This detail, while perhaps mundane, underscored the humble beginnings of a figure prophesied to be a great ruler, fulfilling the prophecy of his birthplace under extraordinary and unplanned circumstances. The impact of these fulfilled prophecies on early Christianity was immense. For the nascent Christian community, these specific correlations between ancient predictions and the life of Jesus provided crucial validation for their belief that he was indeed the long-awaited Messiah. They saw these fulfillments not as mere coincidences, but as clear evidence of divine planning and purpose. The Old Testament, once a historical and legal text for the Jewish people, became for Christians a book pointing directly to Jesus, providing a prophetic blueprint for his life, death, and resurrection. This connection transformed a localized Jewish sect into a powerful religious movement, giving it historical depth and spiritual authority. Furthermore, the Messianic expectations among the Jewish people at the time were incredibly high but often diverse. Many anticipated a political Messiah, a warrior king who would liberate Israel from Roman rule and restore the Davidic kingdom to its former glory. While Jesus did not fulfill these political expectations in a conventional sense, his birth in Bethlehem, his Davidic lineage, and the miraculous nature of his conception were seen by his followers as fulfilling aspects of the ancient prophecies that pointed to a spiritual, rather than purely earthly, kingdom. The narrative of his birth, specifically linking it to Isaiah and Micah, reinterpreted the prophecies to fit a spiritual savior, redefining the very concept of the Messiah for millions. The story of Jesus' birth, therefore, is not just a historical account. It is a profound testament to the perceived power of ancient prophecy to shape not only religious belief but the entire course of human history, offering a compelling example of prophetic texts finding their echo in the most unexpected of circumstances. Our journey through ancient prophecies now brings us to an event much closer to the modern era, yet no less shrouded in the mists of an uncanny foresight, the Great Fire of London. This particular prophecy stands out because it wasn't delivered by an ancient oracle in a temple, but by a figure who embodies the fusion of science and mysticism in the transitional period between the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. William Lilly, a highly influential and controversial astrologer of the mid-17th century. Lilly's predictions were published years before the event, making their subsequent accuracy all the more unsettling and cementing his reputation as a true seer for many. William Lilly was no fringe eccentric. He was a celebrated figure in his time, consulted by politicians, royals, and common folk alike. His annual almanacs, filled with astrological predictions and commentaries on current events, were immensely popular and widely read across England. In his 1651 publication, Monarchy or No Monarchy in England, Lilly presented a series of enigmatic engravings, accompanied by verses that many later interpreted as direct prophecies. Among these was a particularly chilling image depicting figures engulfed in flames, accompanied by text that hinted at a devastating fire in London. More specifically, he alluded to a major conflagration that would sweep through the city in the year 1666, a date that immediately caught attention due to its ominous numerology with the number of the beast. He even spoke of a fiery plague and ruin by fire in the city of London, laying out a destiny for the city that seemed too dire to contemplate. His specific mention of the year alongside the imagery made a deep impression on the public consciousness, even though many likely dismissed it as mere sensationalism at the time. 15 years after Lilly's prophecy, in the early hours of Sunday, September 2nd, 1666, the nightmare materialized. A fire began in the bakery of Thomas Fariner, the King's Baker, on Pudding Lane, a narrow, timber-lined street near London Bridge. The initial blaze, seemingly small, quickly escalated. London at the time was a sprawling, tightly packed city, largely built of timber and pitch, with narrow streets and overhanging jetties that nearly touched across alleyways. A long, hot, dry summer had left the wooden buildings and their contents tinder dry. A strong east wind, fanning the flames from the River Thames, propelled the fire westward with terrifying speed. It leapfrogged from building to building, consuming everything in its path, creating a firestorm that was virtually unstoppable. The city's attempts to combat the blaze were woefully inadequate. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, initially underestimated the threat, famously declaring, "Pish, a woman might piss it out." This fatal complacency, coupled with the lack of an organized fire brigade and the general chaos, allowed the fire to rage unchecked. The traditional method of fighting fires, demolishing houses to create fire breaks, was initially resisted due to property disputes and the sheer speed of the fire's advance. By the time King Charles II ordered widespread demolition, it was largely too late. The fire devoured whole districts, historical landmarks, churches, and public buildings with astonishing rapidity. For 4 relentless days, the Great Fire consumed London. It destroyed 87 parish churches, including the magnificent old St. Paul's Cathedral, whose massive stone roof collapsed with a sound like thunder. Over 13,200 houses were incinerated, leaving an estimated 70,000 to 80,000 of the city's 100,000 inhabitants homeless. The inferno created its own weather system, with firewhirls and strong updrafts sucking debris high into the sky. The heat was so intense that lead from church roofs flowed like rivers in the streets. The fire only began to subside on Wednesday, September 5th, when the wind finally died down and the systematic use of gunpowder to create effective fire breaks finally halted its destructive march. The aftermath was a scene of utter devastation. The heart of London, once a vibrant medieval city, was reduced to a smoking ruin, a vast expanse of charred timbers and rubble. The human cost beyond the direct fatalities was immense, with widespread homelessness and economic ruin. Yet from this destruction, a new London would rise. Sir Christopher Wren, a brilliant architect, was tasked with rebuilding St. Paul's Cathedral and numerous other churches, shaping the city's iconic skyline. The reconstruction led to wider streets, improved building materials like brick and stone, and better urban planning, though many of Wren's grander visions for a new London were never fully realized due to property disputes and financial constraints. William Lilly's prophecy of a calamitous fire in 1666 was not merely a general prediction of hardship. It was a specific, date-connected foretelling of an urban catastrophe. Contemporary engravings and historical accounts of the Great Fire of London graphically depict the exact scenario Lilly had outlined years earlier, from the widespread destruction to the fiery nature of the event itself. The event caused immense panic and soul-searching among the populace, with many seeing it as divine retribution and a direct fulfillment of biblical and modern-day prophecies. The fact that Lilly, an astrologer, had seemingly pinpointed this specific devastating event in time and nature cemented his legend and fueled the belief that certain individuals possessed a genuine, if terrifying, ability to glimpse the future. The Great Fire of London, therefore, stands as a chilling testament to the power of prophetic utterance, leaving behind not only physical ruins but also a powerful historical validation of a seer's uncanny vision. From the ashes of London, we now turn our gaze across the English Channel to France, where another cataclysmic event would shake the very foundations of European society, the French Revolution. This turbulent period, marked by the overthrow of a monarchy, the rise of radical republicanism, and a deluge of bloodshed, has long been associated with the enigmatic prophecies of Michel de Nostradamus, better known as Nostradamus. His poetic, often obscure, quatrains penned in the 16th century have fascinated and confounded interpreters for generations, with many claiming they uncannily foretold the major events of this seismic upheaval. Nostradamus published his monumental work, Les Prophéties, in 1555. These verses, written in a cryptic, almost dreamlike style, often mixing French, Latin, Greek, and other languages, were designed to be deliberately ambiguous, allowing for multiple interpretations. This ambiguity, while frustrating to some, has allowed his followers to find correlations between his writings and countless historical events long after his death. For the French Revolution, in particular, many scholars and enthusiasts point to specific quatrains as eerily prescient. One such verse from Century 1, Quatrain 14 reads, "From the enslaved people, songs, chants and demands, princes and lords held captive in prisons. In the future by headless ones, these will be received as orations." This quatrain is often interpreted as a direct reference to the uprising of the common people, their demands for liberty, and the eventual imprisonment and execution of the aristocracy, including King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. The headless ones are seen as a chilling allusion to the guillotine, the instrument that became the grim symbol of the revolution's reign of terror. The build-up to the French Revolution was a century of simmering discontent. France, under the Bourbon monarchy, was a nation burdened by immense debt, exacerbated by lavish royal spending and costly wars like the American Revolutionary War. The vast majority of the population, the Third Estate, bore the brunt of taxation while the nobility and clergy enjoyed vast privileges. Crop failures led to soaring bread prices, pushing the populace to the brink of starvation. Enlightenment ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity spread rapidly, challenging the established order of absolute monarchy and divine right. This volatile mix created fertile ground for the kind of societal explosion that Nostradamus's prophecies seemed to hint at. The spark that ignited the revolution came on July 14, 1789, with the storming of the Bastille. This medieval fortress and prison, a symbol of royal tyranny, was attacked by an angry mob. Its fall, though strategically minor, was a huge symbolic victory, signaling the breakdown of royal authority and the triumph of popular will. This event is seen by many interpreters as the specific enslaved people rising mentioned in Nostradamus's verse. The subsequent years saw the monarchy steadily stripped of its power. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette were first forced to leave Versailles and reside in Paris under virtual house arrest, fulfilling the princes and lords held captive part of the prophecy. Their attempted flight to Varennes in 1791 further eroded public trust, sealing their fate. The revolution then descended into its most violent phase, the Reign of Terror, from 1793 to 1794. Driven by radical factions like the Jacobins, led by figures such as Maximilien Robespierre, tens of thousands of perceived enemies of the revolution were arrested, imprisoned, and ultimately executed by guillotine. The image of the headless ones from Nostradamus's prophecy became a gruesome reality, as tumbrils carried victims daily to the Place de la Révolution, where the national razor awaited. The chilling efficiency of the guillotine, designed to provide a swift and supposedly humane death, became an instrument of mass execution, eliminating dissent and purging French society of its old order. Contemporary paintings and prints from the period vividly depict these scenes. Crowds gathered around the scaffold, the blade falling, and the heads displayed to the cheering or jeering masses. These visual records eerily echo the violent imagery that Nostradamus's verses seemed to invoke centuries earlier. Perhaps one of the most striking Nostradamus interpretations related to the French Revolution concerns the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Century 1, Quatrain 76 states, "An emperor will be born near Italy who will cost the empire very dear. They will say, with what people he associates, then they will find him less prince than butcher." Napoleon, born in Corsica, which was then a recent acquisition of France and culturally tied to Italy, rose from humble beginnings to become a general, then first consul, and eventually emperor of the French. His military campaigns and imperial ambitions indeed cost the empire very dear, leading to decades of warfare across Europe and millions of deaths. The shift from prince to butcher could be seen as a commentary on his initial revolutionary ideals devolving into a ruthless pursuit of power. Another quatrain often cited is Century 8, Quatrain 1, which mentions Pau, nay, Laurent, an anagram many interpreters believe points to Napoleon Roy or Napoleon the King, a clever linguistic trick often attributed to Nostradamus. While skeptics argue that Nostradamus's prophecies are so vague that they can be fitted to almost any historical event, the sheer volume of interpretations linking his quatrains to the specific events and figures of the French Revolution, the fall of the monarchy, the terror, and the rise of Napoleon makes a compelling case for those who believe in his prophetic abilities. The historical record, filled with period documents detailing the plight of the imprisoned royals, the daily executions, and the rise of a Corsican general who reshaped Europe, provides a rich tapestry onto which these ancient verses are laid. It's a powerful illustration of how the quest for meaning in chaos often leads back to the ancient whispers of those who claim to see beyond their time, finding echoes of their prophecies in the most tumultuous chapters of human history. Our incredible journey through ancient prophecies now takes us back to the heart of the Roman Republic, to one of the most famous assassinations in history, that of Gaius Julius Caesar. This is a chilling tale of human ambition, political intrigue, and a prophetic warning that went unheeded, leading to a dramatic shift in the course of Roman, and indeed world history. What makes this prophecy particularly compelling is its precise dating and the vivid accounts we have from historical sources like Plutarch and Suetonius, painting a picture of a man warned repeatedly, yet tragically unable to escape his fate. The most iconic of these warnings came from a soothsayer, a seer who publicly confronted Caesar. According to Plutarch, as Caesar was making his way through the streets of Rome, a soothsayer named Spurina approached him and uttered the now immortal words, "Beware the Ides of March." The Ides of March in the Roman calendar fell on the 15th day of the month. This wasn't a vague, generalized warning. It was specific, precise, and delivered directly to Caesar himself. It was a potent omen, one that many in superstitious Rome would have taken seriously, particularly given Caesar's own fascination with portents and omens. Imagine the scene: the bustling Roman forum, the great general, the most powerful man in the world, being stopped by a lone figure with such a dire prediction. The air would have crackled with tension, a sense of foreboding settling over the crowd. But the prophetic warnings didn't stop there. On the very night before his assassination, March 14th, 44 BC, Caesar's wife Calpurnia was plagued by terrifying dreams. She dreamt that their house collapsed, that Caesar was murdered in her arms, and most chillingly that the pinnacle, the ornamental spear point on the top of their house, which the Senate had set there by decree for an ornament, fell down. She interpreted these as unmistakable signs of impending doom for her husband. So deeply troubled was she by these visions that she implored Caesar not to attend the Senate meeting the next day. This was a significant plea coming from a woman not known for superstition, who genuinely feared for her husband's life. Her distress was so profound that Caesar, for a moment, hesitated, perhaps swayed by her genuine terror. Despite these multiple, explicit warnings, the public pronouncement from the soothsayer and the private, terrifying dreams of his wife, Julius Caesar ultimately chose to ignore them. Initially, he did consider Calpurnia's pleas and contemplated postponing the Senate session due to her ill omens and his own poor health. However, Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus, one of the conspirators and someone Caesar considered a friend, arrived at his home. Decimus cunningly played on Caesar's pride, urging him not to disappoint the Senate by his absence and suggesting that his delay would be seen as a sign of weakness or, worse, caprice. He even subtly mocked Caesar's supposed reliance on a woman's dreams, a powerful appeal to a man who prided himself on his unwavering resolve and stoic demeanor. This psychological manipulation proved effective. Caesar, determined not to appear cowardly or superstitious in the eyes of his peers, dismissed the warnings and set off for the Senate meeting, walking directly into the trap that had been meticulously laid for him. The fateful morning of March 15th, 44 BC, saw Caesar make his way to the theater of Pompeii, where the Senate was temporarily meeting. Along the way, legend has it, he encountered the soothsayer Spurina again. Caesar, with a touch of arrogance, remarked, "The Ides of March are come," implying that the prophecy had proven false. Spurina, with a grave expression, replied, "I, Caesar, but not gone." This exchange, recorded by historians, highlights the tension and the inevitability of the moment, a final, unheeded warning before the storm. As Caesar entered the Senate chamber, surrounded by many of the senators he trusted, the conspirators, numbering around 60, closed in. They feigned deference, surrounding him under the guise of presenting petitions. Suddenly, Publius Servilius Casca struck the first blow, a glancing stab to Caesar's neck. This was the signal. In a chaotic scene of thrusting daggers, Caesar was overwhelmed. He initially resisted, but upon seeing Marcus Junius Brutus, another trusted friend and a man he had greatly favored among his attackers, Caesar reputedly uttered his famous last words, "Et tu, Brute." "You too, Brutus." He then covered his face with his toga and fell at the foot of a statue of his old rival, Pompey the Great, pierced by 23 stab wounds. The assassination was a bloody spectacle, a desperate act by those who believed they were preserving the Roman Republic from what they perceived as Caesar's tyrannical ambitions to become king. They saw themselves as liberators, not murderers. The immediate aftermath of Caesar's assassination was not the restoration of the Republic that the conspirators had envisioned. Instead, it plunged Rome into a new period of intense civil war. The conspirators, initially believing they would be hailed as heroes, found themselves facing the wrath of Caesar's loyalists, led by figures like Mark Antony and Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian. The resulting power vacuum and the subsequent conflicts fundamentally altered Roman politics. The Senate, weakened and discredited, lost its remaining authority. The assassination, far from saving the Republic, ultimately accelerated its demise, paving the way for the rise of the Roman Empire. Octavian, through a series of tactical alliances and military victories, consolidated power, eventually becoming Augustus, the first Roman emperor, ushering in the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and stability under imperial rule. The assassination of Julius Caesar stands as a powerful testament to the accuracy of specific, date-bound prophecy. The soothsayer's stark warning and Calpurnia's ominous dreams were not vague expressions of general misfortune. They pinpointed the exact day of his death. The visual evidence of this event, often reenacted in films and plays, with Caesar falling on the Senate floor, surrounded by his betrayers, serves as a grim fulfillment of the unheeded warnings. This historical episode demonstrates that even the most powerful individuals, despite their strength and influence, can seemingly be powerless against a predetermined fate, or at least against the consequences of ignoring clear prophetic warnings. From the political machinations of ancient Rome, we transition to a far more terrifying and encompassing prophecy, one steeped in the grim realities of the late Middle Ages, the arrival of the Black Death. This was not a prophecy concerning a single person or a city, but rather a chilling foretelling of a cataclysmic plague that would sweep across continents, claiming millions of lives and fundamentally reshaping European society. Unlike the precise warnings given to Caesar, the prophecies of the Black Death were often embedded in the pervasive religious and superstitious beliefs of the medieval era, found in texts that warned of divine retribution and apocalyptic events, reflecting a deep-seated fear of unseen forces and a world on the brink of judgment. In the centuries leading up to the 14th century, medieval Europe was a deeply religious and often fearful place, heavily influenced by biblical narratives of pestilence and divine wrath. Texts like the Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, though written later in the late 15th century, drew upon pre-existing anxieties and established a framework for understanding calamities as supernatural interventions, often linked to sin, witchcraft, or God's judgment. While the Malleus Maleficarum itself didn't directly predict the Black Death, its pervasive themes of demonic influence and widespread suffering mirrored and magnified the anxieties that permeated earlier medieval writings. Earlier medieval chronicles and theological interpretations frequently spoke of approaching great pestilences as signs of the end times or as direct punishment for humanity's sins. These were not specific, date-bound predictions, but rather a general, pervasive prophetic atmosphere, a constant undercurrent of dread that the world was becoming increasingly corrupt and ripe for a widespread, devastating scourge. This collective sense of impending doom, fueled by recurring famines, minor outbreaks of disease, and social unrest, created a fertile ground for the belief that a truly catastrophic plague was not just possible but inevitable, a divinely ordained cleansing. The stage was thus set for the arrival of the bubonic plague. Originating in Central Asia, likely carried by fleas on rats, the disease began its relentless march westward along the Silk Road. In the 1340s, it reached the Crimea, where a pivotal moment occurred during the siege of the city of Kaffa, modern-day Feodosia, by the Mongol Golden Horde. According to some accounts, the Mongols, suffering from the plague themselves, catapulted infected corpses over the city walls, intentionally spreading the disease to the besieged Genos merchants. These merchants, fleeing the plague-ridden city by ship, inadvertently carried the contagion across the Mediterranean. This act, whether intentional biological warfare or a desperate measure, turned the Black Death into an unstoppable force, demonstrating how human conflict could inadvertently become a vector for prophesied doom. By 1347, the plague had landed in Sicily and quickly spread to mainland Italy, then to France, Spain, and North Africa. Its advance was terrifyingly swift and devastatingly effective. The primary vector was the oriental rat flea, Xenopsilla chiopes, which lived on the black rat. When the rats died, the fleas sought new hosts, primarily humans. The bacterium Yersinia pestis caused painful swellings called buboes in the lymph nodes, hence bubonic plague. A more virulent form, pneumonic plague, attacked the lungs and could spread human to human through airborne droplets, making it even more terrifying due to its rapid contagion and almost certain death. The sheer speed of its transmission and the horrific nature of the symptoms, fever, chills, vomiting, agonizing pain, and eventually blackening of the extremities, created a profound sense of helplessness and terror among the populace, validating the dire warnings that had permeated their culture. The impact of the Black Death on Europe was nothing short of apocalyptic. Between 1347 and 1351, it is estimated that the plague killed between 30% and 50% of Europe's population, a staggering 25 to 50 million people. Some regions were almost completely depopulated. Entire villages were wiped out, fields lay fallow, and cities became charnel houses. The dead often outnumbered the living, making proper burial impossible. Mass graves became common, and the social order collapsed in many areas. The economic consequences were equally profound. A drastic labor shortage led to higher wages for survivors, undermining the feudal system and paving the way for nascent capitalism. The psychological and spiritual toll was immense. People grappled with why God would unleash such a horror, leading to both fervent piety and desperate hedonism. Flagellant movements emerged where people publicly scourged themselves to atone for sins and appease an angry God, directly embodying the pervasive belief in divine judgment. Artworks from the period vividly depict the horror and despair of the Black Death. Images of the Dance of Death, where skeletons lead people from all walks of life, kings, peasants, popes in a macabre procession, became commonplace, reflecting the indiscriminate nature of the plague and the universal fear of death. These grim artistic expressions were not merely symbolic, they were accurate reflections of a society grappling with mass mortality. Early maps of the plague spread, though not as precise as modern epidemiological maps, graphically illustrate its relentless advance across Europe, moving from port to city, following trade routes, leaving a swath of destruction in its wake. These maps show the rapid transmission across vast distances, demonstrating the plague's reach and confirming the scale of the predicted widespread pestilence. The Black Death's fulfillment of vague medieval prophecies about a great pestilence was not about specific details but about the overwhelming scale of the catastrophe and its profound societal impact. It confirmed the deepest fears of a populace steeped in religious warnings of divine punishment. The plague served as a horrifying validation of the idea that humanity was susceptible to sudden, uncontrollable forces, whether divine or natural, that could upend the entire world order. The long-term consequences of the Black Death, societal restructuring, economic changes, An enduring psychological trauma ensured that this fulfilled prophecy left an indelible mark on European history, shaping its trajectory for centuries to come, and reinforcing the belief that some calamities are indeed divinely or preternaturally foretold. From the ravages of plagues and the fall of empires, we now navigate our historical journey to a prophecy steeped not in fear, but in the allure of the unknown and the promise of unimaginable riches. The ancient myths of lands across the great ocean, often envisioned as the legendary 7 cities of gold. This is a fascinating chapter where ancient fables, seemingly fantastical, found an unexpected and profound fulfillment through one of history's most pivotal voyages, that of Christopher Columbus. This isn't a prophecy in the traditional sense, delivered by an oracle or a prophet. Rather, it's a compelling example of persistent cultural narratives and deep-seated human desires manifesting in exploration, fundamentally reshaping the world. Long before Columbus set sail, Europe buzzed with tales and legends of mystery lands, particularly those of unimaginable wealth, lying far to the west across the vast, unexplored Atlantic Ocean. One of the most famous of these was the myth of the 7 cities of gold, or Cibola. This legend, which gained traction throughout medieval Europe, told of 7 bishops who, fleeing the Muslim invasion of the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century, sailed westward and founded 7 opulent cities overflowing with gold and precious jewels hidden somewhere across the sea. These weren't just idle bedtime stories. These were powerful narratives that fueled the imaginations of explorers, merchants, and monarchs alike, contributing to a psychological landscape ripe for transoceanic discovery. The myth of Antillia, a phantom island, also reinforced the idea of a large landmass in the Atlantic, a place of refuge and untold riches. These weren't explicit predictions of a new continent, but they were deeply ingrained cultural prophecies, hints and whispers of a land unlike any known. Christopher Columbus, a Genos navigator, was deeply influenced by the prevailing cartographic theories of his time, which, though incorrect in their estimation of the Earth's circumference, boldly proposed that one could reach Asia by sailing west. He was driven by a fervent belief in this western passage, fueled by the desire to find a new trade route to the lucrative spice markets of the East, places like India and China, known for their silks, spices, and gold. His primary motivation was economic, and religious zeal also played a significant role, as he hoped to spread Christianity to new lands and perhaps even find a new path to Jerusalem. But beneath these pragmatic goals lay the powerful undercurrent of those ancient myths, the tantalizing prospect of discovering new lands, perhaps even the fabled islands of gold that had captivated European imagination for centuries. He wasn't setting out to find a new world in the sense of an unknown continent, but rather a faster way to the known riches of the old world's east. Yet, his unwavering conviction that vast, rich lands lay to the west, whether Asia or some legendary islands, aligned perfectly with the underlying hope carried in those ancient tales. On August 3, 1492, Columbus embarked on his momentous first voyage from Palos de la Frontera, Spain, with 3 small ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Niña. After weeks of sailing into the unknown, enduring doubt and near mutiny from his crew, land was finally sighted on October 12, 1492. He landed on an island in the Bahamas which he named San Salvador, believing he had reached the East Indies. He continued to explore other islands in the Caribbean, including Cuba and Hispaniola, convinced he was on the fringes of Asia. He never realized he had stumbled upon an entirely new continent, a new world that was previously unknown to Europeans, a land not of the fabled Asian spice markets, but of its own unique treasures and peoples, fulfilling the spirit, if not the letter, of the prophecies about rich, distant lands to the west. While Columbus himself remained convinced he had reached Asia, his voyages had an impact far beyond his initial intentions. He did not find the 7 cities of gold as literally described in medieval European folklore. but his arrival in the Americas unleashed a torrent of European exploration and conquest that led to the discovery of vast amounts of actual gold and silver, particularly in the Aztec and Inca empires, which were later brutally exploited by Spanish conquistadors. The legend morphed into a tangible, albeit tragic, reality, inspiring subsequent expeditions by countless adventurers who followed in his wake, driven by the same allure of unfathomable riches. His voyages, though not aimed at finding a new continent, effectively discovered it for the European world, triggering perhaps the most profound unintended consequence in global history. The most monumental outcome of Columbus's voyages was not just the discovery of new lands, but the initiation of what historians now call the Columbian Exchange. This was a vast, unprecedented, and often brutal two-way transfer of plants, animals, culture, human populations including enslaved people, technology, ideas, and tragically, diseases between the Americas, the New World, and the Old World, Europe, Africa, and Asia in the 15th and 16th centuries. From the Americas came crops like potatoes, corn, tomatoes, tobacco, and chocolate, which revolutionized European and global diets. From Europe came wheat, rice, horses, cattle, pigs, and most devastatingly, diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, against which indigenous populations had no immunity. These diseases decimated native populations, often by 90% or more, an unimaginable human catastrophe. The exchange profoundly altered the biological and cultural landscapes of both worlds, creating a new global economy centered on trade and colonization. The visual evidence of this exchange is all around us. The presence of chili peppers in Thai cuisine, tomatoes in Italian sauces, or Arabian horses in America, all trace back to this monumental period of interconnection. Thus, the ancient myths and prophecies of distant, rich lands to the west, whether seen as the seven cities of gold or Antillia, found their profound, albeit indirect, fulfillment through Columbus's voyages. It was not a precise prediction of a geographical landmass, but a powerful cultural expectation that spurred exploration. His journey, undertaken to find a new route to existing wealth, inadvertently opened up an entirely new hemisphere, fundamentally transforming global ecology, economics, and demographics. The discovery of America by Columbus, driven by a mix of ambition, error, and the persistent whisper of ancient legends, stands as a testament to how human action, fueled by long-held, seemingly mythical prophecies, can inadvertently fulfill an even grander, more transformative destiny, shaping the very fabric of our interconnected world. From the age of exploration, we now leap forward to one of the darkest chapters in human history, an era marked by unprecedented conflict and unspeakable atrocities, the rise of Adolf Hitler and the terrifying reality of World War II. This period, too, has been linked by many to ancient prophecy, not from classical antiquity, but from a figure shrouded in the mists of English folklore, Mother Shipton. Often depicted as a grotesque, wizened witch, her prophecies are said to have been made in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, and while their exact historical provenance is debated, their popular association with major historical events is undeniable, particularly her chilling foresight of a man with a twisted cross causing widespread devastation. Mother Shipton, born Ursula Southdale in 1488 in Knaresborough, Yorkshire, was a real historical figure, albeit one whose existence quickly became steeped in legend. Accounts describe her as having very unusual physical features, which, combined with her reported ability to accurately predict future events, led to her reputation as a powerful prophetess. Her prophecies were primarily transmitted orally for generations before appearing in print in the mid-17th century, almost a century after her death. This gap between oral tradition and print publication naturally raises questions about the authenticity and exact wording of her original pronouncements. However, it's in these printed versions that we find the most striking and unsettling prophecies concerning future global conflicts. One particular verse, often attributed to her, chillingly foretells a coming age of great destruction. The world will turn topsy-turvy, and a man with a twisted cross will come out of Germany, and he will raise a great war. This line, "a man with a twisted cross," has been almost universally interpreted as a direct reference to Adolf Hitler and the swastika, the ancient symbol he notoriously appropriated and twisted into the emblem of the Nazi Party. The historical context leading up to the rise of this man with a twisted cross was one of profound global instability. The end of World War I left Germany economically devastated and politically humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. The subsequent hyperinflation, the Great Depression of the 1930s, and deep-seated social unrest created a fertile breeding ground for extremist ideologies. Into this vacuum stepped Adolf Hitler, a fervent nationalist and charismatic orator, who promised to restore Germany's pride, economic prosperity, and military might. His National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party, gained power through a potent mix of propaganda, intimidation, and the exploitation of popular grievances. The swastika, a symbol with ancient origins representing prosperity and good fortune in various cultures, was adopted by the Nazis and became the terrifying emblem of their hateful ideology. Its distinct angular form, often depicted on its side, perfectly matched the twisted cross described in Mother Shipton's alleged prophecy, turning a symbol of peace into one of terror. Once in power, Hitler systematically dismantled democratic institutions, consolidated his authority, and initiated aggressive rearmament. His territorial ambitions, outlined in his manifesto Mein Kampf, quickly became apparent. The annexation of Austria, the occupation of the Sudetenland, and the invasion of Czechoslovakia demonstrated his disregard for international law and established borders. European powers, still reeling from the previous war and eager to avoid another conflict, initially pursued a policy of appeasement, hoping to satisfy Hitler's demands. But the prophecy of a great war was inexorable. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, triggering declarations of war from Britain and France, and plunging the world into a conflict far more destructive than any before it, World War II. The war quickly escalated, encompassing virtually every continent and involving tens of millions of soldiers and civilians. This was not merely a regional conflict, but a global conflagration, exactly as the prophecy suggested, driven by the expansionist ambitions of a singular, charismatic, and terrifying leader. The Great War, unleashed by the man with a twisted cross, brought unimaginable horrors, none more profound than the Holocaust. This systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime and its collaborators was an atrocity of unprecedented scale. Guided by a racist ideology that deemed Jews, Roma, homosexuals, disabled people, and political dissidents as undesirables, the Nazis implemented a program of enslavement, torture, and extermination across Europe. Concentration camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Dachau became sites of industrial-scale murder, standing as grim monuments to humanity's capacity for evil. The scale of this genocide, meticulously planned and executed, reverberated across the globe, leaving an indelible scar on the collective conscience. The geopolitical shifts resulting from World War II were equally monumental. The conflict completely redrew the world map, leading to the collapse of old empires, the rise of two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, and the dawn of the nuclear age. It also laid the groundwork for the Cold War, a decades-long ideological struggle that shaped international relations for the latter half of the 20th century. Archival footage from the period chillingly substantiates the visual and conceptual elements of Mother Shipton's prophecy. Footage of Hitler addressing massive rallies, flanked by thousands of swastika flags, vividly illustrates the man with a twisted cross and his pervasive influence. Film of blitzed cities, bombed-out landscapes, and the systematic horrors of concentration camps undeniably portray the Great War and its devastating consequences. These images, often grainy and black and white, serve as powerful reminders of the prophecy's grim fulfillment. While skeptics argue that Mother Shipton's prophecies were likely embellished or even fabricated after the events they supposedly foretold, the powerful resonance of the man with a twisted cross in popular culture and its striking visual correlation with Hitler and the swastika makes it a compelling example for those who believe in the enduring power of ancient foresight to capture the essence of future calamities centuries before they unfold. This prophecy, whether a genuine foresight or a post-facto attribution, offers a chilling echo from the past, reminding us of the profound impact of individual will on the course of global events. From the horrors of war and the rise of dictators, we now turn our attention to a different kind of looming catastrophe, one that devastated economies and shattered lives across the globe, the Great Depression. This isn't a story of military might or political intrigue, but of financial markets, human behavior, and the chilling accuracy of economic predictions that, much like the warnings given to Julius Caesar, were largely ignored. While many dismissed these forecasts as mere doomsaying, the scale of the ensuing economic collapse lent an undeniable prophetic weight to the voices that had cried out warnings from the financial wilderness. One such voice belonged to Roger Babson, a prominent American entrepreneur, economist, and business theorist of the early 20th century. Babson was a well-respected figure, known for his statistical analyses and his often contrarian views. Throughout the 1920s, as America reveled in an unprecedented boom of prosperity known as the Roaring Twenties, fueled by speculative investments, easy credit, and a seemingly endless appetite for consumer goods, Babson observed a troubling trend. He saw an unsustainable bubble forming in the stock market, driven by rampant speculation, irrational exuberance, and a dangerous disconnect between stock prices and company earnings. While the general public, and indeed many leading economists, remained optimistic, blinded by the seemingly endless upward trajectory of the market, Babson meticulously studied historical economic cycles and warned of an inevitable downturn. His most famous and chilling prediction came on September 5, 1929, when he delivered a speech at the annual National Business Conference in Massachusetts. In it, he declared, sooner or later, a crash is coming, and it's going to be a terrific one. He explicitly warned investors to stay out of the market. This was not a vague warning of general economic malaise. It was a specific, public, and highly publicized prediction of a stock market crash. The financial establishment largely scoffed at his words. Irving Fisher, a highly influential economist from Yale, famously proclaimed just a few weeks before the crash that stock prices had reached a permanently high plateau. The prevailing sentiment was that the good times would last forever, and anyone suggesting otherwise was simply out of touch. Yet, Babson's prophecy, dismissed by many, began to unfold with terrifying speed less than 2 months later. The collapse started subtly with minor dips, but the true unraveling began on October 24, 1929, a day now famously known as Black Thursday. On this day, the stock market experienced a dramatic decline, with trading volume reaching unprecedented levels as panicked investors tried to sell off their shares. While the market recovered slightly by the end of the day due to interventions from leading bankers, it was merely a temporary reprieve. The true horror arrived on Black Monday, October 28th, and Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929. On Black Monday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged by nearly 13%, followed by another 12% drop on Black Tuesday. In just 2 days, billions of dollars in paper wealth vanished, wiping out the savings of countless investors, from seasoned professionals to ordinary citizens who had bought into the speculative frenzy. The stock market crash was not merely a financial event confined to Wall Street. Its ripple effects quickly spread across the entire global economy, triggering a devastating chain reaction that plunged the world into the Great Depression. The most immediate and tragic consequence was widespread bank failures. As stock prices plummeted, individuals and businesses who had borrowed money to invest in the market found themselves unable to repay their loans. Banks, in turn, suffered massive losses and, facing a crisis of confidence, experienced widespread bank runs as panicked depositors rushed to withdraw their savings. Many banks simply ran out of cash and were forced to close their doors, wiping out the life savings of millions of ordinary citizens who had no federal deposit insurance at the time. The sight of long lines of desperate people outside closed banks became a grim symbol of the era. Archival photos of bank failure show crowds of people outside of financial institutions, often with signs declaring "closed," vividly capturing the despair. The collapse of the financial system led directly to unprecedented levels of unemployment. With banks failing and credit drying up, businesses could no longer secure loans to operate, expand, or even pay their workers. Consumer demand plummeted as people lost their savings and jobs, leading to further reductions in production. Factories shut down, farms were foreclosed, and construction projects ground to a halt. By 1933, at the peak of the Depression, the unemployment rate in the United States soared to 25%, meaning 1 in 4 Americans who wanted a job could not find one. Globally, the numbers were equally grim. Millions were thrown out of work, facing destitution, hunger, and homelessness. Visual evidence from the era, such as photographs of soup kitchens with long queues of hungry men, Hoovervilles, shantytowns built by the homeless, and Dust Bowl refugees fleeing destroyed farmlands, provides a harrowing testament to the human suffering caused by the economic collapse. The Great Depression was not confined to the United States. It rapidly became a global phenomenon, primarily due to the interconnectedness of world economies after World War I. American banks suffering from the crash began to recall loans from European nations, which further destabilized their fragile post-war economies. International trade collapsed as countries implemented protectionist tariffs, exacerbating the economic downturn worldwide. Countries heavily reliant on exports, raw materials, or American loans suffered immensely, leading to widespread poverty and political instability in nations across Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The global nature of the crisis underscored the scale of Babson's terrific crash, which rippled far beyond the American stock market. Stock market graphs from the period show the dramatic plunge of indices like the Dow Jones, a visual representation of how quickly and severely financial markets collapsed, mirroring the sudden drop predicted by Babson. The economic predictions of figures like Roger Babson, though dismissed by many at the time, were remarkably accurate in foreseeing the stock market crash and the subsequent economic devastation. His warnings, rooted in statistical analysis and an understanding of speculative bubbles, proved to be genuinely prophetic, anticipating a calamity that profoundly reshaped nations, societies, and the very role of government in economic life. The Great Depression, therefore, serves as a powerful reminder that not all prophecies are delivered by ancient seers. Some arise from the careful observation of human patterns and the inherent instability of unchecked financial speculation, a chilling testament to the foresight of those who dared to speak uncomfortable truths against the tide of popular euphoria. From the devastating economic forecasts of the Great Depression, our attention now shifts to a chilling premonition of nautical disaster, one so precise it continues to baffle and intrigue. We're talking about the sinking of the Titanic, a tragedy that gripped the world in 1912, yet was eerily foretold 14 years earlier by a novelist named Morgan Robertson. This isn't a prophecy from an ancient oracle or a biblical text, but a work of fiction that became a terrifyingly accurate blueprint for a real-world catastrophe, blurring the lines between art, coincidence, and genuine foresight. In 1898, Morgan Robertson published his novel, Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. At first glance, it was just another maritime adventure story. However, with the benefit of hindsight, the parallels between his fictional narrative and the actual sinking of the Titanic are nothing short of astonishing. Robertson's novel described a massive, supposedly unsinkable ocean liner named the Titan, the largest ship ever built. This fictional vessel, touted as the pinnacle of naval engineering and luxury, was on its maiden voyage across the North Atlantic in April. It was filled with wealthy and privileged passengers, much like the real Titanic. Furthermore, the novel described the Titan as being ill-equipped with lifeboats, carrying only enough for a fraction of its passengers. This critical detail eerily mirrored the real Titanic, which, despite exceeding regulations, still had insufficient lifeboats for everyone on board, a consequence of the prevailing belief that the ship itself was unsinkable. The striking similarities between fiction and reality continue beyond the ship's attributes. In Robertson's novel, the unsinkable Titan strikes an iceberg in the North Atlantic. This collision causes significant damage, and the ship, despite its advanced design, rapidly sinks, resulting in immense loss of life due to the severe shortage of lifeboats. The fictional sinking occurs at night in the frigid waters of April, just like the real event. The causal chain, a massive, supposedly unsinkable ship, maiden voyage, April, North Atlantic, iceberg collision, rapid sinking, insufficient lifeboats, and massive loss of life, is almost identical in both the novel and the historical tragedy. This level of detail, written 14 years before the fact, led many to believe that Robertson possessed some form of prophetic insight, or at the very least, an uncanny ability to combine precise technical understanding with a chillingly accurate imagination. The real-world tragedy of the RMS Titanic unfolded on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City in April 1912. Hailed as the unsinkable ship, the largest vessel afloat at the time, the Titanic represented the height of human ingenuity and technological prowess. Its builders and owners propagated an aura of invincibility, a hubris that, as in many ancient Greek tragedies, would prove fatal. The ship was crammed with over 2,200 passengers and crew, ranging from some of the wealthiest individuals in the world to hopeful immigrants seeking a new life in America. There's even a chilling modern-day visual reference with submarine footage, as the Titan submersible disaster in 2023, on its way to visit the Titanic wreck, brought a new, tragic echo to the original story of hubris and disaster, creating an eerie callback to the very concept of the Titan. Despite receiving multiple iceberg warnings from other ships via wireless telegraph, the Titanic's crew, confident in the ship's invincibility and eager to maintain a fast schedule for its record-breaking maiden voyage, either did not fully heed these warnings or were unable to react in time. The prevailing mindset was that a ship of the Titanic's caliber simply could not be sunk by an iceberg. Warnings from lookouts were delayed or misinterpreted, and the ship continued at high speed through the icy waters. The ship's wireless operators, overworked, also failed to pass along one critical warning of ice directly in their path to the bridge, a human error that would prove devastating. At approximately 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. The impact tore a series of gashes along the starboard side of the hull, compromising too many of its supposedly watertight compartments. The engineers quickly realized the ship's fate was sealed. The ship, designed to stay afloat with up to 4 of its 16 watertight compartments breached, had 6 compartments compromised. As water rapidly poured into the lower decks, the ship's forepeak began to sink, pulling the bow down. the grand illusion of unsinkability began to crumble, giving way to grim reality. The ensuing chaos was compounded by the severe shortage of lifeboats, a direct parallel to Robertson's Titan. Despite regulations, the White Star Line, believing so strongly in the ship's integrity, had not equipped the Titanic with enough lifeboats for all on board. When the order to abandon ship was finally given, panic and confusion ensued. Many lifeboats were launched partially filled, leaving precious space empty. The frigid water of the North Atlantic, near freezing, ensured that those who fell or jumped in would succumb to hypothermia within minutes. The ship's band famously continued to play, attempting to calm the passengers as the ship slowly tilted, its stern rising into the air before plunging beneath the waves at 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912. Of the over 2,200 people on board, more than 1,500 perished in the icy waters. Only about 705 survived. The disaster sent shockwaves around the world, exposing the dangers of unchecked hubris and highlighting the consequences of ignoring warnings, both from nature and, in this case, from an almost prophetic piece of fiction. The sinking prompted significant changes in maritime safety regulations, including stricter lifeboat requirements, 24-hour radio watch, and the establishment of the International Ice Patrol. The wreckage of the Titanic lies nearly 4 kilometers beneath the ocean surface, a poignant and silent testament to a disaster that, in its astonishing details, seemed to have been written years before it ever unfolded, fulfilling a fictional prophecy with devastating accuracy. The discovery of the Titanic wreck in 1985 and subsequent underwater expeditions provide haunting visual confirmation, showing the ghostly remains of the ship split in two, resting on the ocean floor, serving as a powerful, silent witness to this incredible, tragic fulfillment of an author's chilling vision. From the eerie accuracy of a fictional novel predicting disaster, we now delve into a realm where ancient spiritual texts appear to foresee the ultimate destructive power unleashed by humanity, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is a journey into the heart of Hindu scriptures, specifically the Bhagavad Gita, and its startling parallels to the mushroom cloud, an event that reshaped warfare and human consciousness in the 20th century. It's a profound intersection of millennia-old spiritual wisdom and cutting-edge, devastating technology, suggesting that perhaps some truths about creation and destruction are cyclical, eternal, and embedded in the fabric of existence. The Bhagavad Gita, a foundational text of Hinduism composed around the 5th to 2nd centuries BCE, forms part of the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata. It presents a dialogue between Lord Krishna, an avatar of Vishnu, and Arjuna, a Pandava prince, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Facing a moral dilemma about fighting his own kin, Arjuna receives divine counsel from Krishna on duty, righteousness, and the ultimate nature of reality. It's during this profound discourse that Krishna reveals his universal form to Arjuna, a vision of cosmic magnitude that encompasses all creation and destruction. In chapter 11, verses 12 and 13, Krishna describes a blinding light, a brilliance beyond comprehension, 1,000 suns blazing forth simultaneously. Arjuna, overwhelmed by this awe-inspiring and terrifying vision, describes it as a blazing light filling the whole universe with its radiance. This description of an unbearable, all-consuming light and heat has resonated deeply with those who witnessed or studied the effects of nuclear explosions. Even more striking are the verses that follow in Gita chapter 11, which describe the destructive aspect of Krishna's universal form. Arjuna observes countless beings rushing headlong into Krishna's gaping mouths, like moths flying into a blazing fire, consumed and annihilated. Krishna declares, "I am time, the destroyer of the worlds, all-devouring, having come here to engage all people." The text speaks of entire armies being swallowed up, of the earth trembling from the force of this cosmic display. These vivid descriptions of immense, indiscriminate destruction, of beings vaporized in an instant, and of a light resembling 1,000 suns, bear an uncanny resemblance to the eyewitness accounts and scientific descriptions of nuclear detonations. This isn't a direct prediction of specific weaponry, of course, but the conceptual parallels between the ancient spiritual vision of ultimate cosmic destruction and the modern reality of atomic warfare are undeniably powerful, leading many to ponder if human action has merely mirrored a pre-existing, perhaps even preordained pattern of destruction foreseen by ancient sages. Fast forward to the 20th century, to the height of World War II. After years of secret research and development under the code name the Manhattan Project, the United States successfully developed the atomic bomb. This monumental scientific and technological undertaking, driven by the urgency of war and the fear that Nazi Germany might develop such a weapon first, involved thousands of scientists, engineers, and technicians. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb, codenamed Trinity, was detonated in the New Mexico desert. The blast created a terrifyingly beautiful and destructive mushroom cloud, and the light described by witnesses was precisely that of 1,000 suns. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific director of the project, famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita upon witnessing the Trinity test. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," directly linking the terrifying power he had unleashed to the ancient Indian scripture. This quote, coming from a man who fully understood the implications of his creation, underscores the profound philosophical and existential shock wave the atomic age brought forth. Less than a month later, this unimaginable power was unleashed upon humanity. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb, Little Boy, on the city of Hiroshima, Japan. The city was almost entirely leveled, and an estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people were killed instantly or within minutes by the blast, heat, and radiation. Thousands more died in the following weeks and months from injuries and radiation sickness. Buildings were vaporized, and shadows of people and objects were permanently etched onto surfaces where they had once stood. The single bomb created a firestorm, sweeping across the city and turning it into a landscape of unimaginable devastation. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, a second atomic bomb, Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki, Japan, resulting in another immediate 400,000 to 70,000 deaths. The bombings, while ending World War II, ushered in the nuclear age, forever changing the nature of warfare and international relations. The visual evidence of these events is stark and haunting. Historical footage, often grainy and black and white, shows the distinctive mushroom clouds rising over the devastated cities, the sheer scale of destruction captured from reconnaissance planes. Interviews with Hibakusha, the survivors of the atomic bombings, offer chilling first-hand accounts of the blinding flash, the searing heat, and the immediate, terrifying obliteration of their world, echoing precisely the ancient descriptions of beings consumed by a divine, all-encompassing fire. The conceptual link between the Bhagavad Gita's description of cosmic destruction and the atomic bombings is a powerful one, often cited by those who believe in the cyclical nature of time and the universal patterns of human experience. While not a literal prophecy of a specific technological invention, the ancient text's ability to articulate the sheer scale and character of nuclear devastation centuries before its scientific possibility is striking. It serves as a profound reminder that humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction might be an eternal theme, repeatedly manifesting in new forms throughout history, fulfilling ancient insights into the ultimate power that lies within both the cosmos and human hands. From the ancient spiritual visions of destruction, we now fast forward to the dawn of the 21st century, to an event that seared itself into the global consciousness and fundamentally reshaped our world, the September 11th attacks. What makes this catastrophe particularly chilling for many is its purported foretelling by the enigmatic 16th century prophet Nostradamus. Once again, his cryptic quatrains, centuries old, are brought forth by interpreters who claim they eerily predicted the horrific events of that fateful day, hinting at a new level of terror unleashed upon a globalized world. Among Nostradamus's vast collection of prophecies, one quatrain in particular from century 6, quatrain 97, has been widely cited as a premonition of the 9/11 attacks. 5 and 40 degrees, the sky will burn, fire approaches the great new city. Immediately a huge, scattered flame will leap when they will want to have a test of the Normans. While its interpretation is open to debate, as is the case with all of Nostradamus's writings, many proponents argue that 45 degrees could be seen as a reference to the latitude of New York City, which is approximately 40 degrees north latitude. The Great New City is almost unequivocally interpreted as New York City, a global metropolis that was relatively new in Nostradamus's time compared to ancient European capitals. The fire approaches and huge scattered flame are seen as graphic descriptions of the explosions and subsequent collapse of the Twin Towers. The phrase, when they will want to have a test of the Normans, is more obscure, but some interpret Normans as a corruption of Northmen or Americans, suggesting a test or challenge to the modern Western world. Additionally, other Nostradamus interpreters have pointed to an even more specific, though apocryphal, quatrain that circulated widely after the attacks, which spoke of two metal birds or twin iron birds colliding with two great rocks, causing the great new city to burn. While this specific quatrain has never been definitively located in authentic editions of Nostradamus's works, its virality after 9/11 speaks to a collective human desire to find patterns and forewarnings in times of unimaginable trauma, and its conceptual imagery perfectly aligns with the events. The historical reality of September 11, 2001 began as a clear, crisp Tuesday morning in the United States. Without warning, a coordinated series of 4 terrorist attacks was launched by the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda, specifically targeting symbols of American economic and military power. At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 aircraft crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. The impact between the 93rd and 99th floors caused an immediate and massive explosion, tearing a gaping hole in the building and igniting roaring fires fueled by the plane's jet fuel. This chilling image of a commercial airliner transformed into a weapon striking a skyscraper in a major city immediately brought to mind the two metal birds imagery that had circulated. Just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, also a Boeing 767, struck the South Tower of the World Trade Center, impacting between the 77th and 85th floors. This second impact, broadcast live on television, confirmed to the horrified world that it was not an accident but a deliberate act of terror. The sight of two iconic skyscrapers, the two great rocks or Twin Towers, burning furiously in the heart of New York City, was an image that would be endlessly replayed, etching itself into the global psyche. The enormous scattered flame and rapidly spreading fire within both structures were precisely what the alleged quatrain depicted, an almost unbelievable visual manifestation of a centuries-old poetic vision. The horror continued to unfold. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, crashed into the Pentagon, the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense, just outside Washington, D.C. This attack, aimed at America's military might, caused a partial collapse of the building and resulted in the deaths of 189 people. Finally, at 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93, another Boeing 757, crashed into a field in Stony Creek Township, Pennsylvania. This plane, believed to be headed for the U.S. Capitol building or the White House crashed after passengers and crew heroically fought back against the hijackers, preventing it from reaching its intended target and likely saving countless lives, though all 44 people on board perished. The architectural consequences in New York City were devastating and iconic. The South Tower of the World Trade Center, struck second but more severely damaged, collapsed at 9:59 a.m., just 56 minutes after impact, sending a massive cloud of dust and debris billowing through lower Manhattan. The North Tower, which burned for over an hour and a half, collapsed at 10:28 a.m. The structural integrity of both towers, designed to withstand immense forces, was ultimately compromised by the intense heat generated by the jet fuel fires, which weakened the steel support columns. The sight of these two immense structures, once symbols of global capitalism and American ingenuity, imploding into massive clouds of dust and pulverized concrete, became the defining image of that day. In total, 2,977 people were killed in the attacks in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, making it the deadliest terrorist attack in history. The global repercussions of 9/11 were immediate and far-reaching. The attacks sparked the War on Terror, fundamentally altering U.S. foreign policy and leading to military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq. Security measures at airports and public spaces worldwide were drastically increased, impacting daily life for billions. The event spurred a global discussion on terrorism, national security, and the clash of cultures. Beyond the geopolitical shifts, 9/11 left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness, leading to a profound sense of vulnerability and a re-evaluation of security versus civil liberties in many nations. Today, the sites of the attack serve as powerful memorials. At Ground Zero in New York City, the National September 11th Memorial and Museum stands as a solemn tribute to those who lost their lives. The twin reflecting pools, recessed into the footprints of the original Twin Towers, are inscribed with the names of the victims, a poignant reminder of the lives extinguished. The One World Trade Center, rising adjacent to the memorial, stands as a symbol of resilience and determination. These memorials, the countless documentaries, books, and artistic renditions of the event, all bear witness to the huge, scattered flame and the devastating impact described by the purported Nostradamus prophecy. Regardless of whether one believes Nostradamus genuinely foresaw the specifics, the cultural resonance of his words in the wake of 9/11 highlights humanity's persistent quest to find meaning, even prophetic anticipation, in the face of unimaginable tragedy and its subsequent global transformation. From the raw terror of a physical attack on cities, we shift our focus to an invisible enemy, a global scourge that brought the world to a standstill, uncannily echoing ancient prophecies of widespread pestilence and societal upheaval, the COVID-19 pandemic. While no ancient seer explicitly named coronavirus in their visions, the collective anxieties and dire warnings about a great plague or great pestilence, woven into countless historical texts and prophecies, particularly those concerning divine judgment or societal collapse, found a frightening resonance in the 21st century. These aren't isolated incidents in history, but recurring patterns that suggest humanity is perpetually vulnerable to such widespread biological threats, a truth perhaps foreseen by those who looked for larger cycles in human affairs. Consider the general pronouncements found in various ancient traditions, from the biblical books that speak of plagues as a sign of the end times, to the Cumaean Sibyl's more abstract warnings of immense sicknesses sweeping across lands, often tied to moral decay or neglected divine laws. These prophecies, while lacking specific pathogen names, universally described a scenario where a widespread, uncontrollable disease would decimate populations, disrupt normal life, and test the very fabric of society. They painted a picture of fear, isolation, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness in the face of an unseen killer. The prevailing sentiment in these ancient texts was that such a plague would bring chaos, economic ruin, and force humanity to confront its limitations, echoing themes remarkably similar to the societal impact of the Black Death we discussed earlier. The sheer universality of these Great Plague prophecies across diverse cultures and time periods suggests a deep-seated human awareness of infectious disease as a potent force for global disruption. The historical reality of the COVID-19 pandemic began in late 2019, when a novel coronavirus, now officially designated SARS-CoV-2, emerged in Wuhan, China. Initially dismissed by some as a localized outbreak, the virus quickly demonstrated its highly contagious nature, spreading silently and rapidly across borders carried by international travelers. Within months, it had reached virtually every corner of the globe, becoming the first pandemic of its scale in over a century, since the 1918 Spanish flu. The initial symptoms, ranging from mild respiratory illness to severe pneumonia, often presented insidiously, allowing the virus to spread undetected before infected individuals showed clear signs. This made containment incredibly difficult, mimicking the ancient fear of an invisible, insidious enemy. The global response, driven by fear and scientific uncertainty, quickly transformed daily life for billions. Governments worldwide imposed unprecedented measures, including widespread lockdowns, travel restrictions, school closures, and forcing businesses to shut down or operate remotely. The concept of social distancing became a universal norm, fundamentally altering human interaction. Hospitals were overwhelmed, healthcare systems stretched to their breaking point, and medical professionals became frontline heroes, often battling the virus without adequate protective equipment. The sight of deserted city streets, once bustling with life, became a haunting symbol of a world brought to a standstill, a stark visual representation of a society under siege from an unseen force. Images that directly paralleled the descriptions of societal collapse in ancient plague narratives. News clips from early 2020 showing empty airports, shuttered shops, and people wearing masks quickly became iconic. The economic fallout from the pandemic was immediate and devastating, mirroring the ancient prophecies of economic ruin accompanying great plagues. Global supply chains were disrupted, leading to shortages of essential goods. Industries reliant on travel, tourism, and in-person interaction, such as hospitality, aviation, and entertainment, suffered catastrophic losses. Millions of jobs were lost, unemployment rates soared, and governments poured trillions of dollars into emergency relief efforts, accumulating massive national debts. The stock markets experienced sharp declines, and while some sectors eventually recovered, the overall global economy faced its deepest contraction in decades. Data visualizations from this period, showing plummeting GDPs, rising unemployment graphs, and disrupted trade flows, vividly illustrate the prophetic warnings of widespread financial distress. The sudden shift to remote work and digital commerce also revealed vulnerabilities and inequalities within economies, impacting segments of the population more severely than others. Beyond the immediate health and economic impacts, the COVID-19 pandemic also had profound societal and psychological consequences. It fueled anxieties, isolation, and a growing mental health crisis. It exposed deep-seated inequalities within societies, disproportionately affecting vulnerable populations and exacerbating existing social divides. There was a significant rise in misinformation and conspiracy theories, eroding trust in scientific institutions and public health authorities. Yet, amidst the despair, there were also remarkable displays of human resilience, scientific collaboration, and community solidarity, with medical breakthroughs, particularly the rapid development of vaccines, offering a glimmer of hope. Maps showing the global spread of the virus, with dark red hotspots indicating high infection rates, graphically underscore the pervasive nature of this modern plague. Ultimately, the COVID-19 pandemic, while a 21st century biological event, resonated deeply with ancient human anxieties about widespread pestilence and societal breakdown. The broad strokes of its impact, the fear, the isolation, the economic disruption, the overwhelming sense of vulnerability in the face of an unseen enemy, found an uncanny echo in the Great Plague prophecies of antiquity. It served as a stark reminder that some threats are timeless and that humanity's struggle against nature's unseen forces continues, even in an age of advanced science and technology. The experience of the pandemic, with its global reach and profound disruptive power, therefore, stands as a chilling, modern-day fulfillment of those age-old warnings of a great sickness that would once again reshape the world. From the chilling grip of global pandemics, we now transition to a prophecy that offered a glimmer of hope and ultimately reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the late 20th century, the fall of the Berlin Wall. This wasn't a premonition delivered by an ancient oracle, but a powerful undercurrent of belief among visionaries and ordinary people during the intense ideological struggle of the Cold War, who dared to dream that a city cruelly divided would one day reunite. It speaks to a collective human yearning for freedom and the eventual triumph of popular will over oppressive regimes, a notion that seemed impossible for decades, yet came to pass with astonishing speed. During the height of the Cold War, the division of Berlin stood as the starkest, most brutal symbol of the Iron Curtain, the ideological and physical barrier that separated Soviet-dominated Eastern Europe from the West. Erected on August 13, 1961, the Berlin Wall was an oppressive concrete barrier, reinforced with barbed wire, watchtowers, and armed guards, designed to prevent East Germans from escaping to the democratic West. For nearly 3 decades, families were torn apart, friendships severed, and a vibrant city was bifurcated, its two halves living under vastly different systems. Yet, even in the darkest days of this division, voices emerged, particularly from dissidents, human rights activists, and spiritual leaders, who spoke with conviction that this unnatural barrier would not last forever. They prophesied a future where the people, through sheer will and an unyielding desire for freedom, would eventually dismantle the wall. These were not predictions based on astrological charts or secret texts, but on an intuitive understanding of the fundamental human spirit and the unsustainable nature of tyranny. Think of figures like Ronald Reagan, whose challenge to Mikhail Gorbachev in 1987, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," was not just a political demand but a rhetorical prophecy, echoing the deeper sentiments of those who foresaw its demise. The historical context leading to the wall's collapse was a complex interplay of internal pressures within the Soviet bloc and external influences. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was grappling with severe economic stagnation, an unsustainable arms race with the West, and growing discontent among its satellite states. Mikhail Gorbachev, who came to power in 1985, introduced policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika restructuring aimed at liberalizing the Soviet system. While intended to revitalize the USSR, these reforms inadvertently unleashed forces that Gorbachev could not control. Dissident movements across Eastern Europe, emboldened by Moscow's loosening grip, began to demand greater freedom and self-determination. Poland saw the rise of the Solidarity movement, Hungary opened its borders to the West, and Czechoslovakia experienced the peaceful Velvet Revolution. These events created a domino effect, with each step towards freedom in one Eastern Bloc country increasing the pressure on its neighbors. The pivotal moment for Berlin arrived in the autumn of 1989. Mass protests, fueled by a desire for travel freedom and democratic reforms, swelled in East German cities like Leipzig and Dresden. Tens of thousands of citizens took to the streets chanting, "Wir sind das Volk." We are the people, a powerful assertion against the authoritarian regime. The East German government, increasingly isolated and facing an unprecedented exodus of its citizens through Hungary and Czechoslovakia, found itself in an impossible situation. The pressure was immense, both from its own populace and from international condemnation. They needed to signal reform, but their attempts to manage the escalating crisis quickly became a bureaucratic comedy of errors mixed with genuine public defiance. The actual fall of the Berlin Wall came about not through a planned, deliberate decision, but through a misunderstanding and an accidental announcement. On November 9, 1989, at a press conference, Günter Schabowski, a spokesman for the East German Politburo, was tasked with announcing new, more lenient travel regulations. He had not been fully briefed, and when asked when these new regulations would take effect, fumbled through his notes and mistakenly declared, "Immediately, without delay." This unplanned statement, broadcast live on television, sent shockwaves across East Germany. Within minutes, thousands of East Berliners, hearing the news, converged on the checkpoints along the wall, demanding passage to the west. The border guards, confused by the announcement and overwhelmed by the sheer number of people, had no clear orders. Facing a jubilant, peaceful but determined crowd that vastly outnumbered them, they eventually capitulated. Around 10:45 p.m. on November 9, 1989, the first border crossing point at Bornholmer Strasse opened its gates. The floodgates opened literally and figuratively. East Berliners, many in tears, streamed into West Berlin, where they were met by ecstatic West Berliners with cheers, flowers, and champagne. The scene was one of pure jubilation, a spontaneous outpouring of emotion that surprised even the most optimistic observers. People began chipping away at the wall with hammers and chisels, collecting pieces as souvenirs, dancing on its crumbling remains. This wasn't just a political event, it was a profound human moment, a fulfillment of decades of longing, a vivid, tangible manifestation of freedom breaking through oppression. The images of people celebrating on the wall, of families reuniting, and of the physical barrier being dismantled piece by piece, became iconic symbols of the end of the Cold War and the triumph of human spirit. The fall of the Berlin Wall had immediate and far-reaching consequences. It completely undermined the authority of the East German Communist government, which collapsed shortly thereafter. Less than a year later, on October 3, 1990, East and West Germany were formally reunified, a dream that had seemed impossible for over 40 years. Beyond Germany, the fall of the wall galvanized pro-democracy movements across Eastern Europe, leading to the rapid collapse of communist regimes in Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and Romania. Ultimately, it played a significant role in the dissolution of the Soviet Union itself in 1991, marking the definitive end of the Cold War and the ideological confrontation that had dominated international relations for half a century. Celebratory footage from November 9, 1989, and the days that followed provides overwhelming visual confirmation of this prophecy's fulfillment. The sight of people literally tearing down the wall with their bare hands, dancing on its rubble, and embracing strangers is a powerful testament to the human desire for freedom and unity. The iconic Brandenburg Gate, once a stark symbol of division, became a backdrop for joyous gatherings. These visual records capture the euphoria, the disbelief, and the profound historical significance of an event that many had hoped for, but few truly believed they would witness. The fall of the Berlin Wall, therefore, stands as a remarkable testament to the power of collective hope and the prophetic vision that even the most formidable physical and ideological barriers cannot withstand the relentless march of human aspirations for liberty. From the geopolitical triumph of freedom, our journey now arcs back to an entirely different kind of prediction, one rooted not in human politics or natural disaster, but in the majestic, predictable dance of celestial mechanics, the ancient art of predicting solar eclipses. This isn't a prophecy of human fate or societal upheaval, but a testament to humanity's early scientific prowess, the ability of ancient civilizations to observe, record, and ultimately forecast cosmic events with astonishing accuracy. It's a remarkable story of how early astronomers, long before telescopes or modern computational power, deciphered the intricate rhythms of the heavens, transforming seemingly random celestial spectacles into predictable phenomena. For millennia, solar eclipses were often viewed with a mixture of awe and terror. Many ancient cultures interpreted them as ominous signs, portents of doom, divine wrath, or the temporary devouring of the sun by mythical beasts. This powerful emotional response spurred humanity's earliest astronomers to meticulously observe and record these rare and terrifying events. Among the most advanced in this pursuit were the ancient Babylonians, renowned for their sophisticated understanding of mathematics and astronomy. Their meticulous observations, etched onto clay tablets using cuneiform script, chronicled celestial phenomena over centuries. These weren't just casual observations, they were precise measurements and detailed records, painstakingly compiled by generations of scribes in ziggurat observatories. The Babylonians were driven by a profound need to understand the heavens, believing that celestial events held direct implications for earthly rulers and empires. The Babylonians' groundbreaking achievement lay in their discovery and application of the Saros cycle. This isn't a mystical concept but a precise astronomical period. They noticed that solar and lunar eclipses occur in patterns, repeating approximately every 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, 6,585.3 days to be exact. This cycle arises because after this period, the Earth, Moon, and Sun return to approximately the same relative positions, causing similar eclipses to recur. The Saros cycle allows for the prediction of future eclipses based on past ones. While the Babylonians didn't fully understand the underlying orbital mechanics in the same way modern astronomers do, their empirical observations were so consistent and detailed that they could predict when and where eclipses would occur with remarkable accuracy. They had compiled vast catalogues of past eclipses, which allowed them to identify these repeating patterns and extrapolate into the future. It was a triumph of empirical science, a testament to the power of careful observation and pattern recognition. One of the most famous examples of a solar eclipse prediction, often attributed to the Babylonian understanding of the Saros cycle, is the Thales eclipse of May 28, 585 BC. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, the Ionian philosopher Thales of Miletus, drawing on astronomical tables and knowledge believed to have originated from the Babylonians, predicted a total solar eclipse. The significance of this prediction transcended mere scientific curiosity. It had a profound impact on human affairs. The eclipse occurred during a battle between the Lydians and the Medes, two powerful ancient empires that had been engaged in a brutal and protracted war for 5 years. As the two armies clashed on the battlefield, the sky suddenly darkened, the sun vanished, and day turned into night. Imagine the scene, the roar of battle, the clash of swords, suddenly replaced by an eerie silence and creeping darkness, a truly terrifying and awe-inspiring spectacle. The effect on the warring armies was immediate and dramatic, both sides interpreting the sudden eclipse as a divine omen. A clear sign of displeasure from the gods that they should cease their hostilities, immediately laid down their arms. The battle ended abruptly, not by military strategy but by cosmic intervention. The Lydians and Medes subsequently negotiated a peace treaty, sealed by a marriage between their royal families. This event, meticulously recorded by Herodotus, serves as a powerful historical testament to the accuracy of ancient astronomical predictions and their profound influence on human events. It demonstrated that knowledge of the heavens could be a tool not just for understanding the cosmos, but for shaping diplomacy and ending conflicts. Today, we can visualize the intricate dance of Earth, Moon, and Sun that creates a solar eclipse with stunning precision through modern computer animations. These animations show the Moon passing directly between the Earth and the Sun, casting a shadow that sweeps across the Earth's surface. The narrow path of totality, where the Sun is completely obscured, appears like a dark corridor moving across continents. These modern visualizations, built upon centuries of astronomical refinement, confirm the remarkable accuracy of the ancient Babylonian predictions. They underscore how well the Babylonians understood the temporal periodicity of these events, even without the advanced tools we possess today. The ancient world's ability to predict these awe-inspiring celestial events, exemplified by the Thales eclipse, stands as a powerful reminder of humanity's enduring quest to understand the universe and its intricate workings, transforming fear into foresight and superstition into science. From the predictable grandeur of celestial mechanics, we now shift our gaze to a different kind of foresight, one that leaps across centuries to envision a technological marvel that has fundamentally reshaped human civilization, the Internet. While no ancient oracle etched World Wide Web into a stone tablet, the conceptual underpinnings of a global communication network were remarkably anticipated by visionaries whose ideas, once dismissed as fantastical, now feel uncannily prophetic. This is the story of how abstract foresight gave way to concrete reality, transforming how we access information, interact, and perceive our interconnected world. Perhaps the most famous of these technological prophets was Nikola Tesla. More than a century before the Internet became a household word, this brilliant and often unconventional inventor of the late 19th and early 20th centuries envisioned a future where information would flow freely across the globe. In a March 1926 interview with Collier's magazine, Tesla spoke of a time when a man will be able to carry a telephone in his vest pocket that would allow him to communicate with any telephone subscriber on the globe. He then went even further, describing how we shall be able to witness and hear events: the inauguration of a president, the playing of a World Series game, the havoc of an earthquake, or the terror of a battle, just as though we were present. This was not merely predicting mobile phones, it was a profound intuition about live global broadcasting and instantaneous access to media from anywhere, a precursor to streaming video and real-time news feeds. But perhaps his most startling quote, and one that directly resonates with the Internet, was his vision of a world brain. In the same interview, he mused about a future where, when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain, which it practically is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. He spoke of instruments that could be carried in one's pocket that would allow seamless connection to this world brain, enabling instantaneous communication and information exchange. This wasn't merely a network, but a collective consciousness, a global repository of knowledge accessible to all, a conceptual leap that eerily foreshadows the Internet's vast reach and capacity for information sharing. The actual development of the Internet began not with mystical visions, but with pragmatic tactical concerns rooted in the Cold War era. The 1960s saw the United States Department of Defense initiate the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, or ARPANET. The primary goal was to create a decentralized computer network that could withstand a nuclear attack, ensuring communication resilience even if parts of the system were destroyed. This military objective was fused with the academic community's growing need for faster and more efficient ways to share research data and computing resources across vast distances. The initial nodes of ARPANET connected universities and research institutions, slowly building the foundational infrastructure for what would become a global phenomenon. It was a utilitarian beginning, far removed from Tesla's poetic notions, yet moving steadily towards the realization of a global brain. The 1970s brought crucial technological advancements that were instrumental in shaping the Internet we know today. The development of Transmission Control Protocol/Internet Protocol, or TCP/IP, was a watershed moment. Designed by Robert Kahn and Vinton Cerf, TCP/IP provided a standardized method for computers to communicate with each other regardless of their underlying hardware or operating systems. This language of the Internet allowed diverse networks to interconnect seamlessly, making it truly interoperable and scalable. Email also emerged as a powerful early application, revolutionizing communication between researchers and proving the immense utility of network connectivity. These innovations were the true building blocks, transforming a specialized military project into a robust, versatile network capable of supporting a myriad of applications. The 1980s saw the Internet begin its gradual transition from a purely academic and military network to a more public utility. The Domain Name System, or DNS, was introduced, allowing users to type easy-to-remember names like Google.com instead of complex numerical IP addresses. This seemingly small innovation was critical for user accessibility, making the Internet less intimidating for non-technical users. Crucially, the National Science Foundation, or NSF, established the NSFNet, a high-speed backbone that connected various university networks, rapidly expanding the Internet's reach and capacity. While still largely the domain of universities and government agencies, the infrastructure for mass adoption was firmly being laid, inch by painstaking inch. The true explosion of the Internet into popular consciousness occurred in the 1990s with the invention of the World Wide Web by Tim Berners-Lee at CERN. His development of Hypertext Markup Language, or HTML, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP, and Uniform Resource Locators, or URLs, provided the framework for universally accessible information. The introduction of web browsers like Mosaic and Netscape Navigator, with their graphical user interfaces, made navigating the Internet intuitive and visually appealing, democratizing access for millions. Suddenly, the Internet wasn't just a text-based network for scientists. It was a vibrant, interactive space where anyone with a computer and a modem could access information, engage in discussions, and even create their own content. The world brain was starting to pulse with information and user activity. Consider the visual impact of early internet cafes with rows of people huddled over glowing screens, or the iconic "You've Got Mail" notification. These were the early signs of a profound societal shift. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the internet has blossomed into a ubiquitous, indispensable part of modern life, fulfilling Tesla's grand visions and far exceeding the expectations of its early developers. High-speed broadband and wireless technologies have made constant connectivity a reality, allowing billions to access information, communicate, and conduct business from virtually anywhere. Social media platforms connect people across continents, fostering global communities and facilitating instantaneous sharing of news, ideas, and personal experiences. E-commerce has revolutionized retail, making goods and services available at the click of a button. The rise of streaming services has transformed entertainment, offering vast libraries of content on demand. Cloud computing has moved data and applications off individual devices and onto remote servers, creating a truly distributed world brain where information is stored and processed collectively. The sheer volume of data, the speed of its transmission, and the global reach of the Internet are staggering, illustrating how completely Tesla's seemingly outlandish predictions have been realized. The concept of a world brain, or a vast, interconnected global communication network, once confined to the realm of speculative fiction, has become a tangible, inescapable reality. From Tesla's abstract musings about a wireless connected planet to the concrete architecture of ARPANET and the subsequent explosion of the World Wide Web, the Internet's evolution has been a stunning fulfillment of a technological prophecy. It stands as a testament to the power of human ingenuity and foresight, demonstrating how visionary ideas, often centuries ahead of their time, can eventually coalesce into transformative technologies that redefine the very fabric of human existence. From the transformative power of technological foresight, we now turn to a prophecy of a far more profound and existential nature: the ancient warnings regarding humanity's relationship with the Earth and the uncanny validation of these insights by modern climate science. This isn't about predicting a single event, but rather the unfolding consequences of humanity's collective actions over centuries. A slow-motion catastrophe that many indigenous cultures, long attuned to the rhythms of nature, seem to foresee with chilling clarity. For many Native American traditions, the concept of living in harmony with Mother Earth was not merely a philosophical ideal, but a fundamental principle for survival. Their spiritual beliefs inherently included a deep reverence for the land, water, animals, and all natural elements, recognizing them as interconnected parts of a sacred whole. Within these worldviews, there often existed profound prophecies that spoke of a time when humanity, driven by greed and a disconnect from nature, would severely imbalance the earth. These prophecies, passed down through oral traditions and sacred ceremonies, warned of a future where humans would exploit natural resources without reciprocity, poison the waters, pollute the air, and disrupt the delicate balance of ecosystems. They spoke of a great throwing out of balance, where the very systems that sustain life would begin to falter, leading to widespread suffering, altered weather patterns, and a diminishment of life itself. These were not predictions of specific technologies or political systems, but rather a holistic foresight into the long-term ecological consequences of unsustainable human behavior. The wisdom embedded in their reverence for nature positioned them to understand the dire implications of a broken relationship with the earth, a foresight that modern science now confirms with alarming precision. Fast forward to the late 20th and 21st centuries, and the warnings of these ancient traditions have found a powerful echo in the scientific consensus around anthropogenic climate change. Modern climate science, utilizing sophisticated tools and global data, overwhelmingly demonstrates that human activities, primarily the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, deforestation, and industrial processes, are releasing vast quantities of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. These gases act like a blanket, trapping heat and causing the Earth's average temperature to rise, a phenomenon known as global warming. Detailed scientific models, validated by decades of empirical data, show a clear correlation between rising greenhouse gas concentrations and increasing global temperatures. Graphs of atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, derived from ice core samples and direct measurements at observatories like Mauna Loa, show a relentless upward trend since the Industrial Revolution, deviating sharply from natural historical cycles and painting a stark picture of humanity's impact. The consequences of this global warming are precisely what the ancient prophecies hinted at in their more metaphorical language. We are now witnessing a dramatic increase in extreme weather events around the world. Heat waves are becoming more frequent, longer, and more intense, leading to devastating droughts and increased risk of wildfires. Conversely, changes in atmospheric moisture capacity are contributing to more powerful and frequent storms, leading to widespread flooding. Sea levels are rising due to thermal expansion of warming oceans and the melting of glaciers and ice sheets, threatening coastal communities and displacing populations. Ocean acidification, caused by the absorption of excess carbon dioxide, is endangering marine life and disrupting delicate ocean ecosystems. The balance of nature, as warned by Native American elders, is indeed being thrown profoundly out of whack. Visual evidence of these impacts is now commonplace. Satellite images showing shrinking glaciers and polar ice caps, before and after photos of areas ravaged by wildfires or floods, and maps depicting rising sea levels encroaching on coastlines all serve as grim illustrations of a planetary system under immense stress. The prophetic call from ancient traditions, often expressed as a plea for humanity to remember its interconnectedness with nature and to act as stewards rather than destroyers, resonates powerfully with the modern scientific consensus and the urgent calls for climate action. Scientists, policymakers, and environmental activists worldwide are urging for a rapid transition away from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. the implementation of sustainable agricultural practices, reforestation efforts, and global cooperation to mitigate the worst effects of climate change. Though warnings are clear, continued disregard for the planet's delicate balance will lead to increasingly severe and irreversible consequences, exactly as the ancient prophecies foretold. The challenge now is whether humanity, equipped with scientific understanding, will heed these modern-day echoes of ancient wisdom and correct its course, fulfilling the hopeful part of the prophecy, that we still have the agency to choose a path towards healing and balance with the Earth. From the grand sweep of global pandemics and the intricate dance of celestial mechanics, we now turn our attention to a truly remarkable scientific prophecy, one that involves the very edge of our solar system, the prediction and subsequent discovery of a ninth planet, later named Pluto. This is a story of meticulous observation, mathematical genius, and the relentless pursuit of an unseen celestial body, a testament to humanity's ability to infer the unseen from subtle disturbances in the known. It's a powerful narrative of how scientific intuition, backed by rigorous data, can illuminate the cosmos, even if the eventual discovery turns out to be more complex than initially imagined. The central figure in this cosmic detective story is Percival Lowell, a wealthy American astronomer, businessman, and author. Lowell, driven by an almost obsessive fascination with Mars and later the outer reaches of our solar system, founded the Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona in 1894. Equipped with state-of-the-art telescopes for his era, Lowell dedicated himself to the painstaking work of observing and mapping the planets. His work was meticulous, but he also had a deeply intuitive side, a keen eye for anomalies that others might dismiss. It was this intuition, combined with his mathematical prowess, that led him to embark on a decades-long quest for what he termed Planet X. Lowell's prediction of Planet X wasn't born from mystical visions, but from solid astronomical principles and nagging discrepancies in the orbital paths of the known gas giants Uranus and Neptune. Even after Neptune's discovery in 1846, which itself was based on its gravitational influence on Uranus, astronomers noticed that Neptune's orbit wasn't behaving exactly as predicted by Newtonian mechanics. There were tiny, subtle perturbations, slight deviations from its calculated path that simply couldn't be accounted for by the gravitational pull of the Sun and the other known planets. Lowell became convinced that these minute irregularities could only be explained by the gravitational tug of an as yet undiscovered planet lurking in the dark, icy reaches of the outer solar system. He spent years meticulously calculating its probable position, mass, and orbital characteristics, using complex mathematical models to narrow down the vastness of space. He initiated a systematic photographic search for this elusive ninth planet, taking thousands of photographic plates of the night sky, each one a tiny snapshot of countless stars, hoping to catch the telltale movement of his predicted world. Sadly, Percival Lowell did not live to see his prophecy fulfilled. He died in 1916, his Planet X still undiscovered, a testament to the sheer difficulty of finding such a distant and faint object. However, his meticulous calculations and the photographic search he initiated laid the groundwork for future discoveries. The Lowell Observatory continued his work, driven by his pioneering spirit and the persistent belief in Planet X. The search culminated 14 years after his death in 1930 with the tireless efforts of a young astronomer named Clyde Tombaugh. Tombaugh was assigned the painstaking task of systematically photographing sections of the predetermined sky and then meticulously comparing pairs of photographic plates taken at different times. This was done using a blink comparator, a device that allowed him to rapidly alternate between two images, making any moving object blink or jump against the stationary background of stars. It was a tedious, eye-straining process requiring immense patience and an acute eye for detail. On February 18, 1930, after nearly a year of diligent searching and comparing millions of star images, Clyde Tombaugh successfully identified a faint, moving object on his photographic plates. This object was precisely in the region of the sky that Lowell predicted Planet X would be found. The discovery was quickly confirmed by other astronomers, and the new celestial body was tentatively named Planet X. The global excitement was immense. Humanity had for the first time discovered a planet that had been mathematically predicted before it was visually observed, a monumental achievement in observational astronomy. The name Pluto was later suggested by an 11-year-old English girl, Venetia Burney, and formally adopted on March 24, 1930, in honor of the Roman god of the underworld, a fitting name for a dark, distant world. For over 70 years, Pluto held its status as the 9th planet in our solar system, a monument to Lowell's predictive power. The early telescope images of Pluto were incredibly faint, appearing as nothing more than a tiny, distant pinprick of light, barely distinguishable from background stars, directly illustrating the challenge Tombaugh faced. Even through the most powerful ground-based telescopes, Pluto remained largely unresolved, a mystery shrouded in darkness. It wasn't until the advent of more advanced telescopes, like the Hubble Space Telescope, that astronomers began to get clearer, albeit still blurry, images revealing its moon Charon and hinting at its small size. These images slowly began to paint a picture of a world far smaller than initially anticipated, much smaller than any of the other planets in our solar system. This continued scientific inquiry, however, eventually led to a re-evaluation of Pluto's planetary status, a development that Lowell, in his time, could never have foreseen. As astronomers discovered more and more icy bodies in the Kuiper belt, a vast region beyond Neptune filled with small, icy objects, it became clear that Pluto was simply the largest of these trans-Neptunian objects, not a unique planet like Earth or Jupiter. In 2006, the International Astronomical Union, or IAU, formally redefined the term planet. Under the new criteria, a celestial body must orbit the Sun, be massive enough for its own gravity to make it round, and have cleared its neighborhood of other objects. Pluto failed to meet the third criterion, as it shares its orbital neighborhood with many other Kuiper belt objects. Consequently, Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet, a decision that sparked considerable public debate and even emotional attachment, but was rooted in a more rigorous scientific understanding of our solar system's architecture. Despite its reclassification, the discovery of Pluto remains a monumental validation of Percival Lowell's scientific prophecy. He didn't predict a dwarf planet, but his mathematical foresight led directly to its discovery, demonstrating the power of observation and calculation to reveal hidden worlds. The New Horizons mission, which performed a stunning flyby of Pluto in 2015, finally provided humanity with breathtaking, high-resolution images of this distant world, revealing a complex, geologically active surface with mountains of ice and vast plains, a testament to the ongoing journey of cosmic discovery. The journey from a vague mathematical anomaly to the detailed images of a distant world perfectly illustrates the incredible power of human intellect to unravel the secrets of the universe, proving that even seemingly empty space can hold profound and predicted revelations. From the scientific prediction of a distant planet, we now shift our focus to a profoundly human prophecy, one born not of celestial mechanics or ancient texts, but of profound moral conviction and an unyielding belief in justice, the end of apartheid in South Africa. This is a story of a system built on institutionalized racism, a seemingly insurmountable barrier of oppression, and the courageous individuals whose unwavering visions of a free and equal South Africa ultimately transformed a seemingly impossible dream into a powerful reality. This prophecy was uttered not in cryptic verses, but in the clarion calls for freedom and equality that resonated for decades from prisons, churches, and exile. The system of apartheid, meaning apartness in Afrikaans, was officially implemented in South Africa in 1948 by the white minority National Party. It was a brutal, legally sanctioned system of racial segregation and discrimination that codified and enforced white supremacy. It dictated every aspect of life, from where people could live, work, and go to school to who they could marry. Black South Africans, who constituted the vast majority of the population, were stripped of their citizenship, confined to impoverished homelands, and denied fundamental human rights. Mixed marriages were forbidden, education was segregated and unequal, and political participation for non-whites was virtually non-existent. The state enforced these laws with extreme violence, including massacres, detentions without trial, and torture. Despite the overwhelming power of the state, a remarkable internal resistance movement emerged, driven by leaders like Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who articulated a clear vision of a non-racial, democratic South Africa. Their message was not just of political change, but of spiritual and moral transformation, a prophecy of reconciliation and justice that seemed almost unfathomable given the entrenched nature of the system. Desmond Tutu, an Anglican cleric and human rights activist, became a leading voice against apartheid in the 1980s, a time when many of the prominent anti-apartheid leaders were either imprisoned, exiled, or murdered. Tutu articulated a powerful moral vision for South Africa, consistently advocating for non-violent resistance and reconciliation. He became a beacon of hope both domestically and internationally, winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his efforts. From his pulpits, Tutu frequently spoke of a rainbow nation, a future South Africa where people of all races would live together in harmony and equality. His sermons and speeches were not just condemnations of apartheid, they were prophetic declarations of its inevitable downfall, often delivered with an almost joyful certainty, despite the grim realities on the ground. He frequently challenged the white government directly, invoking a spiritual inevitability of justice. He foresaw a future where apartheid would collapse under its own moral weight, predicting this end even when it seemed impossible to many. Perhaps the most potent symbol of the anti-apartheid struggle, and a living embodiment of the prophecy of a free South Africa, was Nelson Mandela. A lawyer and anti-apartheid revolutionary, Mandela co-founded the African National Congress's armed wing, Umkhonto we Sizwe, in the early 1960s, advocating for armed resistance against the oppressive regime. He was arrested in 1964 and sentenced to life imprisonment for sabotage and other charges. For 27 long years, Mandela was held captive, becoming an international symbol of resistance against injustice. Despite his imprisonment, his spirit remained unbroken, and his call for a non-racial, democratic South Africa echoed from his prison cell. His very existence, unwavering in the face of brutal oppression, was a living testament to the belief that one day South Africa would be free. The persistent calls for his release from across the globe became a global prophecy in itself, a demand for justice that refused to be silenced, foretelling the moment he would walk free, not as a broken man but as a liberator. The turning point that led to the fulfillment of this prophecy began to accelerate in the late 1980s. Growing international sanctions, increasing internal unrest, and a recognition by some within the white minority government that the system was unsustainable created an impetus for change. Negotiations began secretly between the imprisoned Mandela and the government. Finally, on February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison a free man. The images of him, his fist raised in a defiant salute cheered by ecstatic crowds, were seen around the world, signaling the beginning of the end for apartheid. His release was not just a political act, it was a deeply symbolic moment, a powerful affirmation for millions that the long-held prophecy of a free South Africa was finally coming true. This moment, broadcast globally, provided immediate visual confirmation that the dreams of freedom were concrete and tangible. The culmination of this long struggle and the ultimate fulfillment of the prophecy came on April 27, 1994, with South Africa's first multi-racial democratic elections. For the first time in their history, all South Africans, regardless of race, had the right to vote. The scenes of millions of people, many elderly and infirm, waiting for hours in long queues, some in wheelchairs, others on crutches, to cast their ballot for the first time, were incredibly moving. It was a powerful act of peaceful revolution, demonstrating the immense desire for democratic participation after decades of denial. Nelson Mandela, the formerly imprisoned revolutionary, was elected the first black president of South Africa in a landslide victory. His inauguration marked the official end of apartheid and the birth of a new, democratic, and truly inclusive South Africa. Historical speeches and visual evidence from this period vividly confirm the prophetic journey. Footage of Desmond Tutu railing against apartheid from his pulpit, his face etched with passion and determination, illustrates the spiritual force behind the movement. News reports from the 1980s showing peaceful protests met with brutal police repression highlight the immense courage of those who embodied the prophecy of defiance. The iconic moment of Mandela's release from prison, his calm demeanor and message of reconciliation, stands as a testament to his prophetic leadership. Finally, the vibrant, colorful scenes of South Africans of all races queuing up to vote in 1994, their faces filled with hope and joy, are the ultimate visual fulfillment of the Rainbow Nation dream. The images of Mandela and Tutu together, leading the charge for reconciliation and truth and reconciliation commissions, were a powerful demonstration of the healing process that followed, embodying the prophecy of forgiveness and unity. The end of apartheid stands as a truly inspiring modern prophecy fulfilled, demonstrating the immense power of human spirit, moral vision, and persistent struggle to overturn even the most deeply entrenched systems of injustice. From the socio-political prophecy of apartheid's fall, we now venture into a realm where ancient spiritual metaphor remarkably converges with cutting-edge 21st century science, the prediction of human genome mapping. This isn't a literal prophecy of sequencing DNA, of course, but it's a compelling example of how abstract spiritual concepts of the Book of Life, or a divine blueprint for humanity found in ancient texts, can find an astonishing, concrete fulfillment in our scientific understanding of the human genetic code. It's a powerful narrative that bridges faith and science, suggesting that humanity's deepest intuitions about life's origins and intricate design have, in a profound sense, been validated by genetic discoveries. The concept of a book of life, or a divine record containing the destinies, identities, or even the very essence of individuals, is a recurring motif in numerous ancient spiritual and religious traditions. Perhaps most famously, the Bible contains several allusions to such a book. In Psalm 139, verse 16, it states, "Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." This verse, interpreted by many theologians, suggests a divine blueprint, a comprehensive record of an individual's existence, perhaps even down to their physical and temporal constitution predating their birth. Similarly, in Revelation chapter 20, verse 12, the Book of Life is depicted as bearing names, implying a divine registry of who each person is. While these passages are clearly spiritual and metaphorical, they convey a powerful intuition that each human being is constructed according to an incredibly detailed, pre-existing design, a set of instructions that determines their very being. For millennia, this has been a theological mystery, a faith-based assumption about divine order. Fast forward to the 20th century, and this ancient metaphor found a stunning scientific parallel. The discovery of DNA deoxyribonucleic acid in the mid-1900s and the subsequent elucidation of its double helix structure by James Watson and Francis Crick in 1953 revolutionized biology. DNA was revealed to be the fundamental genetic material, carrying all the instructions for an organism's development, functioning, growth, and reproduction. It was quite literally the biological blueprint for life passed down from generation to generation. Each human cell contains a complete set of these instructions, neatly packaged into 23 pairs of chromosomes. This complex, elegant molecule effectively functions as the book of life for every living organism. Its sequences of chemical bases adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, encoding all the information necessary to build and maintain a human being. The crowning achievement of modern genetics and the most direct fulfillment of this ancient book of life metaphor came with the completion of the Human Genome Project. Launched in 1990, this ambitious international scientific research project set out with the monumental goal of mapping and sequencing all of the genes, the genome of human beings. It was an unprecedented undertaking involving thousands of scientists across dozens of laboratories worldwide, utilizing cutting-edge technology and immense computational power. The project aimed to identify the precise sequence of the 3 billion chemical base pairs that make up human DNA and to identify all the genes within that sequence. This was widely seen as humanity's attempt to read its own instruction manual to unlock the genetic code that defines us. After 13 years of painstaking work, the Human Genome Project officially completed its primary sequencing and mapping efforts in 2003. The result was a comprehensive, nearly complete map of the entire human genetic code. This was not merely a collection of data, it was a foundational understanding of the biological instructions that make us human. The completion of the reference sequence provided an unparalleled resource for understanding human health and disease. It revealed that humans have approximately 20,000 to 25,000 genes, far fewer than initially estimated, but arranged in incredibly complex and dynamic ways. This monumental achievement immediately began to transform medicine and biology. The impact of human genome mapping on medical advancements has been nothing short of revolutionary. It has enabled scientists to identify the genetic underpinnings of countless diseases, from hereditary conditions like cystic fibrosis and Huntington's disease to complex disorders like cancer, Alzheimer's, and heart disease. This understanding has paved the way for the development of targeted therapies, personalized medicine, and even gene editing technologies like CRISPR, which hold the promise of correcting faulty genes to prevent or cure diseases. For example, understanding the specific genetic mutations that lead to certain cancers allows doctors to prescribe drugs that specifically target those mutations, leading to more effective treatments with fewer side effects. Genetic screening can now identify individuals at risk for certain conditions even before symptoms appear, allowing for preventative measures or early interventions. The ability to read this book of life has literally unlocked new frontiers in human health and longevity. Visual evidence of this scientific prophecy's fulfillment abounds. Animations of the DNA double helix with its elegantly spiraling strands and colorful base pairs are now commonplace, a beautiful representation of the invisible code that governs life. Computer models showing the precise sequence of the 3 billion base pairs of the human genome, laid out like an endless linguistic script, are a direct visualization of the book of life being read by science. Interviews with the pioneering scientists behind the Human Genome Project, like Francis Collins or Craig Venter, convey the excitement, the challenges, and the profound implications of their work. Footage of scientists in laboratories working with DNA sequencers and analyzing genetic data on screens provides a tangible link to the incredible effort that went into mapping this fundamental human blueprint. The very existence of genetic tests, personalized medicine, and the ongoing explosion of biotechnological innovation are all direct, living fulfillments of this ancient metaphor, demonstrating how humanity's spiritual intuition about its own deep design has, in the modern age, been validated and unlocked by the relentless pursuit of scientific knowledge. As our extraordinary journey through 25 ancient prophecies concludes, we are left to ponder the thin, often blurred, lines between random coincidence, profound divine insight, and the uncanny power of human intuition. From the tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy of Oedipus, blind to his own fate, to the meticulously foreseen destruction of Troy, sparked by a prince's birth, history is replete with moments where the future seemed to echo the whispers of the past. We've witnessed the chilling accuracy of the Cumaean Sibyl's abstract warnings finding concrete form in the slow, agonizing decline of the mighty Roman Empire, a process that unfolded over centuries. Then, the almost playful yet terrifying precision of Morgan Robertson's fictional Titan novel, published 14 years before the Titanic's maiden voyage, which eerily detailed the unsinkable ship's collision with an iceberg and its catastrophic sinking due to insufficient lifeboats. These aren't just isolated historical anecdotes, they are threads woven through the tapestry of human experience, leading us to question the very nature of time and destiny. We have traversed continents and millennia, observing how the rise of empires like that of Cyrus the Great was prophesied in royal dreams, and how the fall of formidable leaders like Alexander the Great was marked by unheeded warnings from the wise men of Babylon. The Great Fire of London, a devastating urban conflagration, found its chilling premonition in the cryptic engravings of William Lilly, published years before the Inferno. The tumultuous French Revolution, with its guillotines and the rise of a Corsican general who reshaped Europe, was for many foretold in the ambiguous quatrains of Nostradamus, his words resonating with the revolutionary fervor and bloodshed. Even the Great Depression, a cataclysmic economic crash, was precisely pinpointed by the economist Roger Babson, his analytical foresight dismissed until the market lay in ruins, demonstrating that not all prophecies come from ancient seers but from keen observation. Moreover, we've explored how ancient spiritual visions seem to glimpse the future of human destructive power, with the Bhagavad Gita's descriptions of a light equal to 1,000 suns, and all-consuming destruction finding a terrifying echo in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the realm of public health, the COVID-19 pandemic, a modern global plague, uncannily mirrored ancient prophecies of widespread pestilence, isolation, and societal disruption, reminding us of humanity's enduring vulnerability to unseen threats. In a testament to humanity's yearning for freedom, the fall of the Berlin Wall, a symbol of rigid division, fulfilled a deep-seated hope for unity and liberty, championed by figures like Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, whose moral foresight transcended political realities. And in the continuous march of scientific discovery, the precise prediction of solar eclipses by ancient Babylonians, based on the Saros cycle, showcased humanity's early mastery over celestial mechanics, while Percival Lowell's tireless pursuit of a distant, unseen planet, later named Pluto, highlighted the triumph of mathematical intuition. Even the abstract concept of a world brain or global communication network envisioned by Nikola Tesla has found its concrete realization in the ubiquitous internet, connecting humanity in ways once unimaginable. Our journey concluded with the remarkable alignment between ancient indigenous prophecies of living in harmony with Mother Earth and modern climate science's dire warnings about environmental imbalance, underscoring the timeless wisdom regarding our planet. Each of these 25 prophecies, in its own unique way, invites us to examine the intricate dance between cause and effect, between choice and destiny. Were these mere coincidences, random alignments of events that we, in our human desire for meaning, retroactively ascribe prophetic significance? Or do they hint at a deeper, unseen order to the universe, a subtle current of fate that guides the unfolding of history? Perhaps some individuals, through heightened intuition, divine inspiration, or simply an extraordinary ability to discern patterns, possess a rare capacity to glimpse the future, allowing us to see how the past truly foretold the present. The question remains, how much of our future is truly within our control, and how much is merely the inevitable playing out of a script written long ago? The very existence of these fulfilled prophecies challenges our conventional understanding of time, causality, and the human condition. They compel us to remain open to the mysteries that lie beyond our immediate comprehension, reminding us that the world is far more intricate and interconnected than it often appears. If this exploration of ancient mysteries and their modern manifestations has ignited your curiosity and broadened your perspective, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Join us on our next journey as we continue to unravel history's greatest enigmas and explore the unexplained phenomena that